Chapter 10:17. Zhou had long been looking forward to the completion of demonic neonate's evolution. Now it was finally out. He hurriedly summoned demonic neonate, but she didn't seem to have changed much. She wore ink-purple armor and hugged a demonic sword. She didn't even seem to have grown taller. Appearance isn't important. Elemental abilities are the foundation. Zhou hurriedly looked at demonic neonate's stats. All he wanted to know was how demonic neonate's wheel of destiny had changed after returning to the mythical stage. Demon infant, mythical, evolvable, life providence, son of dimension life soul, supreme, true, demon wheel of fortune, 1 turn. Terror transformation, demon king, S-grade, strength, 81 speed, 81 constitution, 81 essence energy, 81 innate skill, demon sword companion form, none. Terror transformation. Zhou was dumbfounded. Demonic neonate had just advanced to the mythical stage. Although the wheel of destiny he was looking forward to hadn't changed, she actually had the ability to transform into her terror form. He was pleasantly surprised. Isn't this a little too powerful? She has a terror form just after advancing to the mythical stage? Zhou wanted to know what demonic neonate's terror transformation was like. He summoned demonic neonate in-game and made her enter a fear state. Demonic aura spewed out from demonic neonate's body, but in the next second, she vanished in front of Zhou. Zhou knew that he hadn't made demonic neonate move, so she wouldn't randomly move. Since she wasn't moving, it was likely an invisibility ability. Is it invisibility? Zhou could vaguely sense that demonic neonate was in front of him, but he couldn't see her with the naked eye. Zhou tried using the demon god body, but he still couldn't see demonic neonate. When he switched to Supreme Hell King, he still couldn't see her. However, he could vaguely see some strange fluctuations in the space there. They were extremely minute, and even in Supreme Hell King state, it was extremely difficult to detect them. Zhou was somewhat depressed. He wanted to see what demonic neonate's terror transformation looked like, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't see it. It was as though demonic neonate had really vanished. Zhou extended his palm, but he couldn't touch demonic neonate. However, he could sense that she was standing there without moving. All right, it's fine if you can't see. Let's see what your ability is like. Zhou thought for a moment. Today happened to be the day the 9 black dragons in the underground sea respawned. He could go there to grind again. After entering the underground sea, Zhou only summoned demonic neonate. He didn't summon any other companion beasts. The 9 black dragons saw Zhou, but they didn't immediately release their chains. All they did was size up demonic neonate in puzzlement. When the 9 black dragons saw the mythical companion beast at the same time, they would definitely break free of their shackles. Now, they didn't do so immediately. There was only one reason. They couldn't see demonic neonate. At most, they were about the same as Zhou. They only felt that the space there was a little strange, so they didn't immediately break free of their shackles. Demonic neonate, let me see how strong you are. Zhou's heart stirred as he ordered demonic neonate to kill the 9 black dragons. In the next second, Zhou suddenly saw dragon blood spewing out as a black dragon's head was beheaded. It died a violent death without even knowing how it died. Then, Zhou saw an extremely strange scene. The black dragons were spinning around like headless flies. They had no way of discovering what was attacking them. By the time they sensed something, their heads had already been chopped off. Clang, clang, clang. Moments later, the 9 black dragons were killed in the seawater, dyeing the nearby seawater blood red. 2-dimensional crystals and a companion egg dropped. Too powerful. Zhou was pleasantly surprised. In front of the terrifying demonic neonate, the mythical demon blood true dragon was slaughtered like chickens and dogs. Zhou had seen quite a number of experts in their terror form, but none as strong as demonic neonate. The dimensional crystals were useless, but the companion egg had a elite attribute that Zhou didn't have. This way, Zhou had 4 of the 9 demon blood true dragons. I think I can give it a try. What will happen if I kill the guardian inside? Zhou stared at the war chariot at the bottom of the sea. In the past, he couldn't defeat the Guardian, but now, ignoring Zhou Wen's strength, just demonic neonate's terror form should be invincible. Without any hesitation, he opened the war chariot's door and ordered demonic neonate to kill the Guardian inside. Crack! The cocoon of the Guardian was split into two. The six-fingered Guardian that resembled an emperor appeared in Zhou Wen's line of sight. Although he couldn't see it, Zhou Wen could roughly guess that demonic neonate hadn't taken action. She had only used the demonic sword to slice open the Guardian cocoon. Unfortunately, Zhou Wen couldn't see the demonic sword in its terror form. The Guardian seemed to be able to see demonic neonate. He stared intently at demonic neonate with a pale face. The invisible demonic sword slashed down again. The six-fingered Guardian seemed to be able to see the demonic sword. The ring on his finger lit up at the same time as it rapidly spun. His figure also teleported away. However, when he teleported out, his body was split into two by the sword. In the next second, a scene that left Zhou Wen dumbfounded appeared. The demonic sword suddenly revealed its body as demonic aura surged on it, condensing into Grim Demon's figure. He actually grabbed the Guardian's body and devoured it. In a few mouthfuls, he devoured the Guardian's corpse cleanly before automatically returning to the demonic sword and quickly vanishing. Grim Demon is still here? Zhou Wen was slightly surprised. He imagined that Grim Demon would be absorbed by demonic neonate. Killed Guardian Demon Master. A notification popped up in-game. So this Guardian is called Demon Master. Unfortunately, such a powerful Guardian was killed by demonic neonate just like that. There's no time to reveal his abilities to the world. Zhou Wen's heart stirred as he recalled the Guardian in Ant City. However, on second thought, it didn't seem useful for him to kill the Guardian now. It wouldn't be too late to kill him when he had the time in the future. The most important thing now was to finish off the tree in the Maze of Lies. Previously, so many companion beasts had failed to kill the tree. The Ice Dragon King items in their terror form couldn't be brought into the game. Zhou Wen had been worried about this. Now that he had demonic neonate in her terror form, it shouldn't be a problem for him to slice through the tree. He brought demonic neonate to the Maze of Lies and arrived at the garden. Before Zhou Wen could give demonic neonate an order, demonic neonate walked towards the tree. As demonic neonate approached, the tree that had been motionless like a mountain and didn't react at all actually moved. Its leaves swayed and the tree trembled. Its roots rose up, revealing a tree hole. Demonic neonate walked towards the tree hole. Zhou Wen hurriedly controlled the blood-colored avatar to follow and see what was inside the tree hole. So goo. Chapter 10:18. At the entrance of the tree hole, there was a strange spatial distortion. When he passed through the tree hole, he felt a slight spatial fluctuation. After entering the tree hole, the scene he saw left Zhou Wen slightly taken aback. Inside the tree hole was a wooden hut. It wasn't the tomb and tombstone that Zhou Wen had imagined. All the utensils in the wooden hut seemed to be carved from the tree itself. Wooden bed, wooden table, wooden stools, wooden shelves, and all sorts of utensils looked simple but artistic. On the wooden shelves were many books. There was even an open book on the table, as though someone had been reading it. However, Zhou Wen didn't see any other creatures after looking through the entire wooden hut. This is a game. Logically speaking, only dimensional items can appear in-game. Could it be that these books are dimensional items? Zhou Wen saw that demonic neonate had already walked to the wooden table and was looking at the open book on the desk. Zhou Wen leaned over to take a look and realized that he didn't recognize a single word on it. It was a mess of words that he didn't know. In any case, Zhou Wen didn't understand a single word. Demonic neonate extended her tiny hand, and the book flew up by itself. It arrived in front of her and floated above her palm. After demonic neonate evolved, she actually became fond of reading. This is a good phenomenon. Zhou Wen was rather gratified. Demonic neonate was good at everything, but her personality was too ferocious. She usually didn't speak at all, and when she attacked, she killed with one strike. She didn't give others a chance to counterattack, like a cold and heartless killer. Although demonic neonate was impeccable as a companion beast, Joan felt that she was an intelligent creature with feelings after all. It was better to have some humanity. Reading could enrich one's emotions. This seemed to be a good sign. Neonate, what's written here? Before one could finish his sentence, he saw demonic neonate grab the two sides of the book with both hands and open her mouth. She ate the book like she was eating a cake. Joan looked at demonic neonate in a daze, unable to say a word. He realized that he had misunderstood something. However, demonic neonate didn't stop at all. She opened her mouth and swallowed the entire book in a few mouthfuls. After eating, she still didn't have enough. She walked to the bookshelf and devoured the other books one by one. After eating, she licked her lips, looking as though she hadn't had enough. Why did you eat those books? Joan finally reacted and asked demonic neonate in puzzlement. Food. Demonic neonate only said 2 words. Joan was helpless. It was unlikely for him to get demonic neonate to explain. He still didn't know what those books were. Suddenly, the screen turned black. The blood-colored avatar had died again. How could this be? The 1-hour time limit in the garden should not be up yet, right? Could it be that there's a different time limit in the treehouse? Joan guessed as he launched the dungeon again. Now, Joan was certain that there were no masks in-game. There was only a treehouse in the tree. Is Fraud lying, or is reality really different? Joan was almost confident that he could bring Wong Lu, Lance, and company out alive, but there were some things he still wanted to figure out. After entering the garden again, the tree automatically opened the entrance to the wooden hut when it saw demonic neonate. This time, Joan paid special attention to the time inside the tree hole and discovered an extremely strange phenomenon. After all, the flow of time in the tree hole's wooden hut was much faster than outside. An hour outside was only a minute here. Joan also realized the changes in his body after using the 8 perfections Wisdom and Supreme Hell King. From this, he determined that the flow of time here was different. Even if he used the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder, it was useless against the abnormal time flow here. This was because such a time flow was normal in the tree hole's wooden hut. It wasn't some taboo power. The books in the wooden hut didn't respawn again. Joan hurriedly left the tree hole. This was because the flow of time was too fast if he stayed there. He aged too quickly. He was afraid that it would affect his true body. That wouldn't be good. Thankfully, it was only a game and didn't affect his true body. However, the secret of the garden seemed to end there. There were no tombs or masks. Now that Joan knew Sunday's dungeon like the back of his hand, he just waited to head to the maze of lies in reality tomorrow to see if it was different. While it was still early, Joan made another trip to the underground sea. The cocoon in the war wagon hadn't respawned, so he didn't know if it would respawn in the future. With the underground sea's guardian gone, Joan made another trip to Ant City. I've been tortured by Ant City's guardian for so long. Now, I can finally retaliate. Joan was somewhat excited. Ant City was a dungeon that came with the phone. Ant City's guardian was also the first guardian Joan had seen. Joan was still looking forward to killing Ant City's guardian and clearing the dungeon. He stormed all the way to City Ant and directly destroyed the golden flying ant's nest, completely exposing the guardian egg. Neonate, kill it. Joan floated in the air, waiting to watch Ant City's guardian be killed. After demonic neonate's terror transformation, her figure vanished from Joan's eyes. At the same time, he couldn't see the demonic sword as it instantly cleaved open the guardian cocoon. Joan saw Ant City's guardian again. At this moment, Ant City's guardian seemed to have grown a lot. Joan remembered that the last time he saw her, she still looked like a young girl, but now she looked completely mature. Her entire body emitted the charm of a mature woman. Her devilish curves, orange-red pupils, long hair, and hot figure made Joan almost not dare to look straight at her. However, Joan acutely realized that the antennae on the guardian's head and the transparent wings on its back had disappeared. It looked no different from a human. This is the first time I've seen a guardian that can constantly grow. What's this fellow's background? I wonder which dimensional race she represents. Just as Joan was thinking, the terraformed demonic sword slashed at the guardian again. Typical guardians couldn't even see it, much less resist it. Just as Zhou thought that the Guardian was about to be killed, he saw the Guardian's jade-like hands clasp together and grab the demonic sword that was slashing down. At the same time, a strange energy fluctuation spread out from the jade-like hands. With the terrifying energy fluctuation, the Guardian's figure vanished in front of Zhou. Oh no! Zhou suddenly realized something and quickly retreated. Chapter 1019. Boom! Zhou felt demonic neonate move at high speeds. In the next second, the terrifying collision produced an unimaginable explosion and shockwave. The entire ant city was instantly reduced to ruins. The blood-colored avatar relied on the shell dragon armor's absolute defense to block the terrifying strike. But in the next second, Zhou felt his heart palpitate. An invisible force struck the blood-colored avatar's body and penetrated the armor, causing the blood-colored avatar's body to explode. The game screen went black. Terror transformation. That fellow hasn't even come out of the Guardian cocoon. He already has the ability to transform into the terror form. Zhou was alarmed. Zhou knew very well that it was the power of the terror transformation. Furthermore, it was one of the stronger ones. At the same time, one of Zhou's previous guesses was confirmed. Demonic Neonate's Great Demon King state wasn't an invisibility state. It could even be said that it wasn't invisibility at all. However, because the life form, the terror form, was too high level, he couldn't even see it if his level didn't reach that level. However, this high-level terror form wasn't something every terror-transformed creature could achieve. Up to now, the terror-transformed creatures that Zhou couldn't see at all were Demonic Neonate and Ant City's Guardian. It was hard to say who was stronger between Demonic Neonate and Ant City's Guardian, but Zhou's strength was too inferior. Demonic Neonate wasn't a protection-type companion beast, so if Ant City's Guardian chose to attack Zhou, it was impossible for Demonic Neonate to constantly protect him. As long as Zhou was killed, the game would be over. Ant City's Guardian didn't need to fight Demonic Neonate. Her growth speed is really too fast. I wonder when she obtained the Terror Transformation ability. Zhou was somewhat depressed. He had cleared quite a number of dungeons he had downloaded, but he hadn't been able to clear this dungeon that had existed from the beginning. From the looks of it, it would still take some time. He didn't try again. He couldn't even see it, so he had no right to fight Ant City's Guardian. Actually, if Truth Listener uses all its strength, I can still sense a little spatial fluctuation. However, that level isn't enough to support a battle. Zhou felt that he had to advance to the mythical stage to see Demonic Neonate's terror form. Mythical. I'm only one step away from advancing to the mythical stage. How can Glimmer advance to a perfect body? Do I really have to teleport to another planet? However, I don't have the ability to survive in space since I haven't reached the mythical stage. There's no way for me to return. If I were to teleport again in a month, I would have long died. After some thought, Zhou only had one solution. He used the New Era Life Soul's positioning teleportation ability to first locate Earth before using Glimmer to teleport out. Then, he used the New Era Life Soul's positioning teleportation ability to return. The only uncertainty was that he didn't know if New Era's positioning teleportation ability could perform interstellar teleportation. If it couldn't, he would be dead in space. After some hesitation, Zhou didn't dare continue. He planned on returning and thinking of a way to obtain some space capsules and spacesuits. After teleporting to other planets, even if he couldn't teleport back, he could still last a month there until the Glimmer Life Soul's planetary teleportation function recovered. Finally, it was Saturday night. Gaiman got Lance to find Zhou. Everyone who was preparing to enter the Maze of Lies had already gathered in front of the door. Gaiman would personally lead the team this time. Among the younger generation, only Lance would follow. The others were middle-aged and elderly. Basically, people who could enter the maze had at least one mythical companion beast. Wang Lu was considered a very unique existence here. No one knew how strong she was, nor did anyone care. As long as she could defeat the Destiny Twin Witches at the draw, it was enough. "Do you want me to accompany you in?" Li Xin said with a smile. "There's no need. Take care of ya, Zhou put ya her down and stroked her head. I'll be back soon. Wait here. Zhou, are you done? Gamar came over and asked. Although he was somewhat displeased that Zhou wasn't participating in the training, he knew that as a secretary, he couldn't show his emotions. Therefore, his attitude remained very good. Zhou nodded slightly and came in front of Gaiman. Mr. Gaiman, there's something I need to confirm in advance. Will you listen to me for this operation? Gaiman frowned slightly. Gamar hurriedly said, the situation in dimensional zones is ever-changing. There are many unexpected situations that require last-minute responses. If there's time to discuss, your opinion will naturally be the main priority. Gamar's words were considered respectful, but the meaning behind his words was that everyone could adapt to the situation when the time came. Mr. Gaiman, is this your intention? Zhou asked Gaiman. Gaiman pondered for a moment and said, you haven't really entered Sunday's maze of lies. There are many things you might not know. The information you have given me is sufficiently detailed. I don't need to go personally to know what's going on in the maze of lies. Seeing that Gaiman wasn't that certain, Zhou said, I have an agreement with your family. I definitely have to go to the maze, but if I don't have 100% authority, I wish to enter the maze alone. If you're worried, you can let Lance enter with me. Otherwise, I refuse to participate in this operation. The moment that was said, it wasn't just the local tyrants. Even the experts from the Ultimate Family Clan couldn't hold it in. Zhou made it sound as though they were a burden. Isn't your request a little too much? Gaiman said as he stared at Zhou. The final decision. This is also the content of the previous agreement. If you can't abide by the agreement, I won't take the risk of entering the dimensional zone, Zhou said very seriously. Mr. Gaiman, since he's afraid to go, why are you forcing him? He's just a young man who doesn't know his limits. There's no need to bother with him. Mr. Gaiman, let's go in. It's fine if he doesn't want to go. Don't tell me we can't do anything without him. The local tyrants were already dissatisfied with Zhou. Now, they were even more dissatisfied. However, Gaiman was somewhat stumped. This was because Fraud had once again exhorted that Zhou had to be present for this operation to succeed. He had to bring Zhou in. All right, since it's an agreement, we'll do as you wish. You have the final decision. Gaiman pondered for a long time before finally compromising. Everyone was somewhat displeased with Gaiman's compromise, but since it was Gaiman's decision, there was nothing they could do. Chapter 10:20. Although Gaiman had agreed, Zhou didn't relax because of this. The human heart was unfathomable. No one knew what would happen after entering. However, after hearing Fraud's intelligence, Zhou had already done what needed to be done in exchange. If they courted death themselves, Zhou couldn't stop them. After entering the maze, follow me. Listen to everything I say. Don't listen to what others say. Don't believe them, Zhou whispered to Wang Lu. All right. Wang Lu nodded slightly. Everyone arrived in front of the maze and answered the questions according to the order they had arranged. This was because some questions couldn't be answered. They could only give up when encountering such questions. Then, they wouldn't be able to return for a day to answer the questions and enter the maze. Therefore, the Ultimate Family Clan had prepared so many people just in case. Even if a portion of them couldn't enter, it wouldn't hinder their plans. In the team, there were 3 indispensable people, Zhou, Wang Lu, and Gaiman. Zhou glanced at the number of people. There were nearly 30 of them. More than half of the experts in the North District with mythical companion beasts were here. However, if they were to answer one by one, it would probably take 30 minutes for everyone to gather together. This was too wasteful. Mr. Gaiman, must so many people enter? Zhou asked Gaiman. The maze is too dangerous. It's easier to deal with any accidents with more people, Gaiman said. All right then. Where's Wang Lu's position? Zhou asked. Because if Wang Lu doesn't enter, no one will be able to pass the Destiny Witch's test. Therefore, she has to enter first. We will get the 2 families' veterans to receive her to prevent any accidents from happening inside, Gaiman said. Change it. Let Wang Lu be the last to enter, Zhou said. That's not good, right? If she can't enter last, wouldn't our previous work have been in vain? Gamar said, I remember that I'm the one in charge here. If I say she's the last, she's the last. Is there a problem? Zhou said to Gamar. Gamar's expression changed slightly as he was speechless. All he could do was look at Gaiman. With Wang Lu's abilities, it's unlikely she can't enter. Let her be the last to enter, Gaiman said, unwilling to clash with Zhou over such a trivial matter. With Gaiman's orders, Gamar changed the order. Everyone imagined that Zhou had taken a fancy to the young and beautiful Wang Lu and wanted to show off in front of her. They didn't say anything, but felt some contempt. Zhou was still thinking of women at such a time. He was ultimately a young man. What they didn't know was that half an hour later meant that they would only be safe for half an hour. If something happened inside and they couldn't come out in time as planned, it might save their lives. Everyone answered the questions one by one and entered the maze. Many people could only give up because they encountered a dead-end question. Only a little more than half of them were able to enter. Zhou was originally second to last, but after some thought, he got Wang Lu to answer the question first. It wasn't that Zhou wanted to be safer, but he wanted to know what kind of problems a person like Wang Lu would encounter. When Wang Lu walked to the door, a question immediately appeared. Is 1 + 1 equal to 2? Zhou was immediately rendered speechless. There was actually such a question. Without a doubt, Wang Lu successfully entered. Zhou went up to answer the question again and saw the question on the door. Is human nature evil or good? My life doesn't need simple beauty. Zhou decisively activated the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder and randomly chose one. He also successfully entered the maze of lies on Sunday, including Zhou and Wang Lu. A total of 17 people entered. Gaiman and Gamar were among them. Lance had also successfully entered. Gaiman had already arranged for his men to take action the moment Zhou entered. Although he didn't know that there was a time limit here, he knew that he couldn't waste time here. Soon, the group arrived in front of the merry-go-round. There was really a devil clown there. Upon seeing everyone, the 6 magic balls in his hand shot out. Gaiman summoned an ice nightmare. The ice aura spewed out froze the 6 magic balls, preventing them from bouncing again. The devil clown vanished with stealth. One of them summoned a bat-like mythical companion beast. The bat emitted a sound wave that caused the stealth clown to appear, preventing it from maintaining its stealth state. Everyone joined forces to defeat the enemy and successfully killed the troublesome devil clown. No one was injured at all. Zhou didn't find it strange. This was because they had already sacrificed quite a number of people to figure out the devil clown's information. If they still couldn't kill it, they would really be letting down the people who had died in the maze of lies over the years. It's the same as our previous training. Maintain this state and continue advancing. Gaiman led the team in the direction of Witch Castle. While Zhou was in-game, he had actually encountered a few dimensional creatures. However, their range of activity wasn't in this area. Logically speaking, after killing the devil clown, they should be able to reach Witch Castle without any obstructions. However, not long after they walked, they suddenly saw a 3-headed white wolf with a pair of wings on its back fly through the air. One of the wolf heads spewed out flames, another spewed out icy mist, and the middle wolf head unleashed a sound wave attack. It's a 3-headed wolf. Don't panic. Follow the training plan. Gaiman continued commanding. Although the 3-headed wolf was powerful, it was difficult for 3 of them to fight more than 10 mythical companion beasts. They were quickly killed. Although the mythical creatures here are powerful, with mythical companion beasts like us around, it's easy to enter Witch Castle. As a local big shot spoke, he deliberately glanced at Zhou. It was as though he was saying that even without Zhou, they could always do it. Zhou was redundant. Zhou sincerely hoped that he was redundant. Being safe was better than anything else. He wanted to quickly complete the mission and return. However, just as the person finished speaking, he suddenly saw the 3-headed wolf's corpse explode, splattering blood and flesh everywhere. Quite a few of them were stained with blood. Just at this moment, they suddenly heard strange cries coming from all directions. They sounded like wailing, like demons, like ghosts. Vaguely, they could see that there were some creatures in the distance that were approaching them. This seems a little different from in-game. Zhou couldn't help but frown, but he had already guessed what creature it was. Sogu. Chapter 10:21. It was very difficult to communicate in the maze of lies because the silencer had used a silencing spell on most people. Usually, they could communicate through handwritten text, but in an emergency, they could only rely on their reactions. Retreat first. Gaiman didn't have the time to write too many words. He only wrote 3 words for everyone to see before retreating in the direction of the door. Clearly, Gaiman and company didn't know what was about to appear. In the past, they had only explored the parts related to Witch Castle. They hadn't completely explored the entire maze of lies, nor had they seen all the dimensional creatures. However, Zhou had explored the entire maze and had seen most of the dimensional creatures inside. Although he had never seen the 3-headed wolf's corpse self-destruct, he could roughly guess the dimensional creatures that were about to arrive from the sound. If that thing really comes, those who are stained with the 3-headed wolf's blood probably won't have it easy. Zhou swept his gaze and quickly determined who the people stained with the 3-headed wolf's blood were. Wang Lu wasn't stained with wolf blood when she was beside Zhou. Only when she saw that Lance wasn't stained with wolf blood did she feel relieved. However, there were a total of 17 people, and 9 of them were stained with wolf blood. Zhou couldn't help but frown slightly. The 3-headed wolf's self-destruction was really timely. It happened to self-destruct in the middle of everyone. Could it be that it was here to send itself to its death? Upon thinking of this possibility, Zhou was somewhat alarmed. If the 3-headed wolf was really here to send itself to its death, the maze of lies in reality was much more terrifying than in-game. The dimensional creatures in-game were in their respective territories. They would only appear when they were triggered. In reality, the 3-headed wolf had run over and infected so many people with its wolf blood. This was to pave the way for another dimensional creature to appear. When everyone retreated to the door, they set up a formation with their backs to the exit. The companion beasts were also prepared for battle as they looked in the direction of the strange sound. Soon, everyone saw blood-colored puppets appear everywhere. They looked like humans and were very well made. They were even wearing clothes. However, at their joints, there were thin threads that extended into the distance. It's indeed a devil puppeteer. When Zhou saw the puppets, he knew that he had guessed correctly. However, in the game, the devil puppeteer was in the puppet gallery and wouldn't come out on his own. Now, he had actually run out, and those people were already stained with the 3-headed wolf's blood, which just happened to match one of the demon puppeteer's skills. In a while, those people who were stained with the wolf's blood would all become puppets. Of course, this was only his guess. If the devil puppeteer had done something to the 3-headed wolf in advance, then the blood could be used by him. If he hadn't done anything in advance, the blood wouldn't have any effect. Gaiman and company ordered their companion beast to attack the puppet, but in the next second, someone's expression turned extremely horrified. Strange threads appeared on the bodies of those who were stained with the wolf's blood. Those threads were like puppets, extending into the depths of the maze. The people and companion beasts that had thin threads on their bodies were no longer under their control. They seemed to be controlled by the threads as they pounced at their companions. Such an unforeseen event exceeded everyone's expectations. For a moment, chaos ensued. Before the Destiny Witches could even see them, their own people had already started fighting. The puppets also rushed forward to join the battle, and the scene became extremely chaotic. Gaiman wanted to sever the thin threads on those people to see if he could save them. Unfortunately, their weapons slashed down on the thin threads. The thin threads were like flowing water. The weapons slashed over, but the thin threads didn't break. Zhou had long expected such an outcome. He pulled Wang Lu back a distance and waited for the devil puppeteer to appear. It was useless to kill these puppets. The puppeteer had almost countless puppets, so it was useless to exhaust them. He had to wait for the puppeteer to appear and kill him. Gaiman and company clearly realized the problem. They also wanted to find the dimensional creature controlling the puppets. Some even rushed over along the threads. From Zhou's point of view, these were all futile actions. The puppeteer was like demonic neonate. They were both very good at hiding themselves and liked to kill in secret. It was impossible to find him by following the threads. It would only put them in danger. Indeed, after the person rushed over with his companion beasts, there was soon no sound. He was nowhere to be seen, and his corpse was nowhere to be seen. Let's rush over together. Gaiman wrote a few words before wanting to follow the threads on the puppets. The puppets died and came back to life. It was useless to kill them a few more times. They had to kill the person controlling the puppets. You're not allowed to go over. Zhou wrote on the cardboard. The first time he encountered the puppeteer, he had suffered a huge loss. He thought that he could find the puppeteer by following the threads, but what awaited him was a death trap. If we don't go over, we'll die. We can only go over, Gaiman quickly wrote. According to the agreement, I have the final say. All of you stay here. No one is allowed to go over. Zhou quickly wrote a line. Give me a reason. Gaiman stared at Zhou and wrote. I think there's a chance of survival by staying here. Going over will only lead to death, Zhou wrote. Staying here will only lead to death. Mr. Gaiman, ignore him. Let's rush over together and capture the fellow who controlled Old Liu and company. A person wrote a line before rushing towards the other end of the thread. Zhou had no need to stop others if they wanted to die. After all, the lives of these people had nothing to do with him. The others were also eager to give it a try. Clearly, they felt that if this continued, they wouldn't have a chance of leaving alive unless they killed all the people and puppets who were being controlled. Give Zhou a chance. As Lance controlled his companion beasts to deal with the puppets, he rushed over and raised the token in his hand. As communication wasn't convenient, many people wanted to say something, but they didn't have the time to write in battle. Gaiman looked at the spot where the person had gone and saw that he had vanished silently like the previous person. Finally, he gritted his teeth and ordered everyone to continue resisting the puppet's attacks. He gave up on the idea of following the thread. However, their situation worsened. This was because 9 people were being controlled. When they fought the 9 people, it wasn't easy for them to kill them. This resulted in them being in a very passive state. Furthermore, a large number of puppets rushed over, making it extremely difficult for them to deal with them. Chapter 10:22. Gradually, even Gaiman regretted it. Now, they couldn't retreat or advance. They were trapped here by the puppets, and they didn't even have the chance to rush over along the thin thread. Someone had already been injured. Although it didn't look serious, this was a very bad sign. Some people had no choice but to be ruthless against their companions who were controlled like puppets because they couldn't take care of both. If they didn't do so, they would be killed. However, killing one's companions to save one's life wasn't a good thing for anyone. Therefore, they couldn't help but push the blame to Zhou as they glared at him angrily from time to time. If he could speak, Zhou would probably drown in their spit. However, Zhou didn't care about their expressions at all. He had been using Truth Listener to monitor the surroundings, hoping to discover the puppeteer as soon as possible. It looked as though he had ignored their angry gazes. What was even more infuriating was that Zhou didn't participate in the battle. All he did was watch from the back with Wang Lu, like a young master who had brought a beautiful lady on a vacation. We didn't invite you here to pick up chicks. If he could speak, Gamar really wanted to reprimand Zhou. Unfortunately, he could only keep his thoughts to himself. The situation was getting worse. A large number of puppets had already surrounded them, preventing him from writing. More and more people were injured. Gaiman was already considering retreating. Otherwise, not only would he not be able to save the 9 people who were controlled as puppets, but they would also die here. However, he didn't do anything when he entered. He had sacrificed 9 people just like that. He didn't know how to explain himself when he left. In fact, many people already had the intention to retreat. The current situation didn't seem to allow them to continue. Suddenly, Zhou, who had been at the back and hadn't participated in the battle, moved. Everyone saw him pull out the bamboo blade at his waist and vanish. Where's Zhou? Everyone looked around, but they didn't find Zhou. Crack! A dimensional creature in a black robe fell from the bell tower beside them. When it hit the ground, its body had already broken into 2. The puppets also stopped moving when the dimensional creature fell to the ground. The threads on the 9 people who had been controlled fell off, and they regained control of their bodies. Crack! Crack! Kacha! The marionettes shattered one after another. Everyone couldn't help but look up and see Zhou when standing on the bell tower, sheathing the bamboo blade. To which castle? After Zhou came down, he wrote 3 words on the cardboard. Everyone is injured. Let's rest for a while. Gaiman also wrote on the cardboard. In the previous battle, most of the people were injured, especially the 9 people who were controlled. Their injuries were quite serious. This was because when they were controlled, they didn't fear death at all. They fought with their lives on the line, completely disregarding their own bodies. That was why their injuries were so severe. Those who were injured, return. The rest, follow me, Zhou wrote. Our injuries aren't serious. We can continue fighting after recuperating. The big shots who had come from other places had a slightly different impression of Zhou. However, Zhou's words made it seem as though he was treating them as a burden. It made them very displeased. In such a place, time is life. I have to seize every second. I don't have time to wait. After Zhou wrote those words, he pulled Wang Lu towards which castle. Old Zhao, go back first. We'll be out soon. Gaiman thought for a moment and decided to let them return first. Go ahead. We'll recuperate here before catching up. Or we can pick you up here, Old Zhao wrote. All right. Gaiman thought for a moment before writing. However, you have to be careful. If any dimensional creatures appear again, leave immediately. All right, Old Zhao agreed. Gaiman chased after Zhou with the uninjured Lance, Gamar, and 2 other members of the Ultimate Family clan who were slightly injured. Thankfully, there weren't any accidents along the way. The group successfully entered Witch Castle. Zhou had only seen cartoonish versions of witches in-game. In comparison, he realized that these witches were indeed quite beautiful. They weren't as cute as in-game. Welcome to the House of Destiny. The black and white witches began explaining the rules of the game, just like in the game. Wang Lu, sorry to trouble you. Gaiman looked at Wang Lu and showed her the words on the cardboard. Wang Lu nodded and was about to draw a card when Zhou stopped her. Are you all right? If you aren't 100% confident, you don't have to draw. I have a solution. Zhou wrote a few words on her palm. No problem. Don't worry, Wang Lu replied as she wrote on Zhou's palm. That's good. Zhou felt relieved. Since Wang Lu was so confident, there shouldn't be any problems. Wang Lu walked in front of the white-robed witch and reached out to take a card. She opened it, and it was the mass card. The luck ability is indeed too useful. Zhou couldn't help but feel wistful as he watched the door to the garden behind the twin witches open. We've finally reached this step. Gaiman looked at the space behind the door and felt somewhat nervous as he led the group towards the door. Go back first. Zhou wrote on Wang Lu's palm. Since we're already here, why don't I go in and take a look? Wang Lu wrote. No, you have to leave immediately. It will be troublesome if there's not enough time. Zhou urged her to leave the maze of lies immediately. What do you mean by not enough time? Wang Lu asked in puzzlement. I'll explain it to you in the future. Now, you have to leave the maze of lies immediately. You absolutely can't stay inside and wait for me, Zhou exhorted again. However, seeing Wang Lu's curious expression, he knew that she definitely wouldn't leave so easily. Zhou pondered for a moment before lifting Wang Lu up. Ignoring her objections, he carried her and quickly headed back the way he came. After running all the way to the entrance of the maze, Zhou threw her out before turning to head for Witch Castle. Damn it! Wang Lu looked hatefully at the maze door in front of her, but she wasn't really angry. Thinking back to how Zhou had carried her out, she couldn't help but laugh. Seeing that old Zhao and company were still inside, Zhou wrote, all of you can leave. There's no need to stay here. Otherwise, there'll be danger. We're willing to stay. There's no need for you to worry. Old Zhao was very stubborn and refused to leave. Zhou couldn't be bothered to say anything else as he walked towards the garden. I hope Gaiman and company are fine. When Zhou rushed to the garden, Gaiman and company had already entered. They didn't wait for him to return. Chapter 10:23. When Joan passed through which castle and arrived at the garden, he saw Gaiman and company standing motionless in the garden as though they were possessed. What happened? Joan was secretly alarmed. Although there were shape-shifting beasts in the garden, with Gaiman and company's abilities, it wasn't easy for the shape-shifting beasts to kill them. It had only taken him about 10 minutes to send Wang Lu back. Joan didn't believe that Gaiman, Lance, and company had fallen for the shape-shifting beast tricks in such a short period of time. Furthermore, Gaiman and company were only standing in the garden. There were no wounds on their bodies, and there were no signs of battle around them. It didn't look like a huge battle had just happened. However, Gaiman and company stood there motionless like stone statues. Joan looked at the center of the garden, where Gaiman and company were facing. There's no tree. Joan was immediately alarmed. The rest of the garden looked identical to the one in-game, but there was no tree in the middle. There was a tomb where the tree was originally. In front of the tomb was a tombstone, and on the tombstone was a strange mask. The mask looked like a devil, but it also looked like a clown. It was strange and comical, different from any mask Joe had seen before. Gaiman, Lance, and company stared intently at the mask on the tombstone. They didn't even blink, as though they weren't breathing. There really is a tomb and a mask. Fred didn't lie. Joe sized up the mask as he activated Truth Listener and the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder. However, as he looked at it, he realized that he couldn't move his gaze away from the mask. The eye sockets of the mask were like two black holes that seemed to suck away Joan's soul. No good. Joan was alarmed. His first reaction was to summon demonic neonate, but he realized that he couldn't even summon his companion beasts. It was as though some mysterious force was blocking his thoughts, preventing him from contacting his companion beasts. Damn it, what's going on? Joan couldn't be bothered to be alarmed. He first attempted to switch essence energy arts. He could use them, but his body couldn't move. No matter which life soul or life providence he used, his eyes were firmly sucked into the mask, and his body couldn't move. It's over. Joan's heart turned cold. Right now, there was really no response from the heavens or the earth. He could do nothing but stand here. The only thing Joan was glad about was that he had forcefully sent Wang Lu out. Otherwise, she would have died here too. He switched his life soul to the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder. The garden had an hour limit. He couldn't move while standing there. If he didn't have the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder after an hour, he would definitely die. Even with the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder, he didn't know how long he could live. He did not believe that the mask could only attract people to stand there. It must have other abilities. The mask could even eat people. I can still last for a period of time with the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder, but Lance and company don't have the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder. If they can't leave this place in an hour, they will probably die immediately. Joan estimated that there were only about 40 minutes left before the 1-hour time limit in the garden. What should I do? Countless thoughts flashed through Joan's mind, but he couldn't think of a solution. He couldn't move his body or contact his companion beasts. Although he could use essence energy arts, they weren't enough to allow him to escape the strange power of the mask. Time ticked by as cold sweat broke out on Joan's forehead. This was because the hour was approaching, but he still hadn't thought of a way to save Lance and company. Dong, dong, dong. Suddenly, Joan heard a strange sound coming from the grave. It was a very dull knocking sound. The sound kept coming. As the Truth Listener earring had been on Joan's ear in the form of an earring, its ability was still working, allowing Joan to hear that the sound came from the grave. The soil on the grave was shaking. Then, with a dull sound, the mound of soil was rising, as if something was going to drill out of it. I knew it. Every time I enter a dimensional zone in real life, something will happen. I won't be eaten by a dead person this time, right? Joan was extremely depressed. He wasn't afraid because there was no such thing as ghosts and gods in this era. Everything was a dimensional creature. Since ghosts and gods were dimensional creatures, what was there to be afraid of? Dong, dong. The sound from the grave continued sounding. Furthermore, it became clearer and clearer. It wasn't as dull as before. Soon, Joan discovered that a strange chest had appeared from the soil in the grave. It was as though some force was pushing it from below. That's a coffin? The coffins Joan had seen in the past were all squarish, but this coffin style was somewhat strange. It was hexagonal. Dong! Dong! The sound sounded again as the coffin trembled. Now, he was certain that the sound came from inside the coffin. It looked like something was about to rush out of the coffin. Clang! Just as Joan was thinking, he suddenly heard a loud bang. The lid of the coffin flew up. Then, Joan saw a hand extend out of the coffin and block the edge of the coffin wall. It was a pale hand with slender fingers, but it was very thin as though it was malnourished. The fingernails weren't long, but they had a strange jade-like color. They didn't look like normal keratin. Soon, another hand extended out. A pair of hands pressed down on the side of the coffin. It looked very forceful, and even the veins on the back of the hands protruded. Then, Joan saw a head slowly rise up. Long hair covered his face, making it impossible to see what he looked like. From his figure, he was likely a man. The man stood up from the coffin. His figure was about the same as Joan's. Perhaps he was slightly taller, but not by a few centimeters. Judging from its appearance, it was actually a human being. It's impossible for him to be human. Why would a human sleep in such a place? Just as Joan was pondering over it, the person pulled back his hair with both hands, revealing his face. The moment he saw the face, Joan was so surprised that he almost escaped the mask's control. This was because the face looked identical to Lance's. Joan used Truth Listener to carefully observe his figure and realized that his figure was the same as Lance's. It was as though they were carved from the same mold. However, he was thinner than Lance and looked a little malnourished. It's impossible for him to be Lance. Then who is he? Joan was very certain that he wasn't Lance because Lance was standing there in a daze, just like him. So goo. Chapter 1024. After the person came out of the grave, he looked no different from a living person. With Truth Listener's ability, it was impossible to tell if he was human. Crack! The tombstone shattered and the mask embedded in the tombstone floated up and floated in front of the man. The man glanced at the mask and muttered to himself, "Is it finally going to begin again?" With that said, he picked up the mask and slowly placed it on his face. The strange mask stuck to his face as though it had fused with his face. It didn't look like he was wearing a mask. Instead, it was as though the mask had grown on his face to begin with. The feeling was extremely strange. After the man put on the mask, Joan immediately felt his body regain its freedom. It was the same for Lance and company. "I'll ask, and you'll answer. Now you can speak. The rules here won't kill you for speaking," the masked man said calmly. Who are you?" Lance stared at the masked man and asked. Although he couldn't move previously, he clearly had the ability to observe the masked man's face. He was more puzzled than anyone else why the masked man's appearance was identical to his. "Are you Fraud descendant?" The masked man didn't answer his question and instead asked. "That's right. We are all Fraud's descendants. Who are you?" Gaiman stared at the masked man and asked. "None of you are. Only he is." The masked man slowly raised his hand and pointed at Lance with his index finger. "What do you mean?" Lance stared intently at the masked man. "Fraud and I had an agreement. He would give me his descendant, and you are his descendant," the masked man said. Although his words were strange, Joan believed him. This was because Lance shouldn't have come to this operation. Lance had never contracted a mythical companion beast before and had just been injured. Coupled with his special identity, it didn't seem like he should have come here to take the risk. However, Fraud had gotten Lance to participate in this operation. For this, he had even specially contracted a mythical companion beast for him. Joan originally imagined that Fraud was trying to train Lance and give him more experience. That was why he had gotten him to carry out this mission. From the looks of it, it wasn't that simple. Perhaps the masked man's words were true. "What are you talking about? There was no such thing. We are all Fraud's blood relatives. Even if he really has a deal with you, it shouldn't be Lance." Gaiman shielded Lance behind him, but his expression was somewhat odd. Although Gaiman's words were very firm, He was as doubtful as Zhou. No, you aren't. The bloodline in your bodies is only the bloodline of a human fraud. It's meaningless to me. Only he has the bloodline of a non-human fraud. It's the body I need, said the masked man. Nonsense. He's my grandson, and I'm Fraud's son. In terms of bloodline, I'm naturally closer to Fraud. Who are you? Why did you fabricate these lies? Gaiman summoned his companion beasts and gestured for Lance and company to retreat, hoping to leave the garden. The bloodline I mentioned might be a little different for what you understand, but it doesn't matter. From the looks of it, Fraud doesn't plan on offering him to me. As the masked man spoke, his gaze shifted to Zhou. From the looks of it, in order to exchange for his bloodline, he has prepared a better body for me. When the masked man first spoke, Zhou had already realized that he might have been scammed by Fraud. Now that he heard the masked man's words, there was no doubt that he had indeed been scammed. Who are you? Lance stared at the masked man and asked again. The masked man answered unhurriedly, I'm not human. I'm a guardian, the guardian of the maze of lies. How is that possible? You are a human. Besides, the guardian of the maze of lies has already been killed. Lance naturally didn't believe him. The mask on the masked man's face looked like a human's face as it revealed an evil expression. I only said that I'm the guardian of the maze of lies, but I didn't say that I'm the current guardian. You're not wrong to say that I'm human. This is because only by combining with a human body can I obtain the possibility of growing in this world. However, it's too troublesome to contract with humans. I still need to take care of those weak humans. I hate trouble, so I chose to fuse with a human body so that everything is in my hands, the masked man said. Zhou immediately understood that this masked man was the opposite of Wang Mingyuan. Wang Mingyuan had used a human body to absorb and fuse with a guardian. As for the masked man, he had used a guardian's body to absorb and fuse with a human. The foundation was the same, but it was reversed. You were the guardian of the previous battle of guardians? Zhou interrupted. Something like that. The masked man continued. Although fusing with a human body allowed me to escape the restrictions on the power of outsiders in this world, it also forced me to face another problem. A human body is different from a guardian's. A guardian's body doesn't age, but a human's body will age and die. I don't want to die, so before I age, I have to change bodies. Therefore, I made an agreement with Fraud. I helped him obtain what he wanted, and in return, he would give me his bloodline as my new body. According to the agreement, you have finally come to me. As he spoke, the masked man's gaze landed on Lance before landing on Zhou. He didn't move any further. Fraud has really put in a lot of effort. Originally, his bloodline was the most suitable for me, but I never expected that there would be such a body among natural humans. I'll accept his painstaking efforts. Go back and tell Fraud that I've accepted this body. The agreement is over. Lance, who was retreating, stopped when he heard that. He stared at the masked man and said, ignoring the fact that I don't believe such a thing, even if it really exists, this matter has nothing to do with others. This is an agreement between you and our family. Don't implicate others. The masked man laughed when he heard that. Are you going to let down Fraud's painstaking efforts? In order to save you, he found so many people and hoped that I could choose another body. This is your only chance of survival. If I don't choose him, you will definitely die. Lance, let's go. Gaiman pulled Lance back. However, Lance suddenly summoned his companion beast and wore his companion beast armor. He threw a punch at the masked man. Then try and see if he can snatch my body. Gaiman was alarmed. It was already too late for him to stop him. All he could do was cooperate with Lance and attack. Gamar and the other two members of the Ultimate Family Clan also attacked. Their mythical companion beasts mostly had freezing powers. All sorts of freezing rays blasted at the masked man. Chapter 1025. However, the freezing beams passed through the masked man's body as though his body was an illusion. They didn't have any effect. It's useless. Your strength is too weak. You don't have the right to touch me. The masked man watched as Lance's fist and body passed through his body. He stood on the spot and continued. If it wasn't for the fact that this body is too old, you wouldn't even have the right to see me." As he spoke, the masked man's gaze focused. Lance, Gaiman, and company immediately returned to their stunned states, unable to move. "On account of Fraud's good work, I'll forgive your rudeness this time, but don't do it again." After the masked man said that, Lance and company immediately regained their freedom. "This is your deal with our family. If you want my body, take mine. Don't implicate others," Lance said. "Lance!" Gaiman wanted to pull Lance away, but Lance dodged him. "Are you really willing to let me take your body? Do you know that although your body can continue living, your consciousness will be completely wiped away?" "I don't need your consciousness," the masked man asked Lance with interest. "I'll settle my own matters. I don't need anyone to replace me." "It won't be that easy for you to occupy my body," Lance said calmly. "From the looks of it, humans these days seem to have more backbone than before. Unfortunately, I've already changed my mind. I want his body. Your body is no longer useful to me. I won't change my decision. It's up to you to leave or stay, but his body is mine," the masked man said to Zhou. "Sorry, I didn't know things would turn out like this," Lance said to Zhou. "It's fine. It's not your fault." Zhou shook his head slightly. He was already used to the feeling of falling into a scheme. If a person didn't have any wealth, even if he appeared in front of a bad person, the bad person wouldn't scheme against him because there was nothing to gain from it. However, if a person had huge treasures, no matter how far away they hid, someone would still target them. As the saying went, a man's wealth would land him in trouble. This was probably the principle. As Zhou's abilities became stronger, no matter how much he restrained himself, there would be people targeting him. This was inevitable. Of course, Zhou could accept it, but it didn't mean he would forgive Fraud. "Since my life should have been left here, I will still stay here. Even if I really go to hell, I won't be lonely," Lance said. "I don't care if you want to go to hell, but I haven't lived enough. I still want to live for a few more years." As Zhou spoke, his figure suddenly vanished. He used teleportation and headed for the garden's exit. However, Zhou soon realized that the door to the garden had vanished. There was nothing outside the garden with no way out. "Only those with my permission can leave this place," the masked man said with a smile. "Then, can I leave this place after killing you?" Zhou asked directly. The masked man laughed. "Of course, if you can kill me, you can also leave this place. Unfortunately, even the most powerful human is nothing more than an ant in front of me. How do you know it won't work if you don't try?" Zhou continued, drawing his bamboo blade. "I'll fight with you." Lance leaned over and said. "All right, I'll attack from the top while you attack from the bottom," Zhou said. "Okay." Lance immediately rushed over. Zhou was behind him, but he struck the back of Lance's head, knocking him out. "Take him back. Don't be a hindrance here." Zhou hugged Lance and threw him at Gaiman. Gaiman hurriedly caught Lance and looked at Zhou with a complicated expression. "Our family has let you down. I never expected you. Feel free to tell me if you have any wishes. As long as I can do it, I'll definitely help you complete them." Gaiman didn't know, but if such a matter had happened to anyone else, it was impossible for them to be as carefree as Zhou. He was even thinking of Lance and wanted to send him out. "Don't thank me. I'm a person who distinguishes between gratitude and grudges. This matter has nothing to do with Lance. He doesn't need to die with me, but go back and tell Fraud that I'll definitely take back what he owes me," Zhou said. Gaiman didn't say anything else. He only bowed deeply at Zhou before leaving the garden with Lance. From his point of view, it was impossible for Zhou to leave alive. In front of the godlike, invincible masked man, they didn't even have the ability to resist. Only death awaited them. I wonder if demonic neonate is the masked man's match? However, with things having come to this, I can only give it a try. However, it shouldn't be a big problem. I can't even see demonic neonate's terror form, but I can at least see this masked man. Zhou closed his eyes, preventing his gaze from coming into contact with the mask. He hoped to prevent his body from being immobilized. It's useless to close your eyes. The influence of this mask isn't targeted at your eyes, but your soul, the masked man said to Zhou with interest. He looked at Zhou as though he was looking at a new car or a house. He was filled with curiosity, but he didn't treat Zhou as a person. Can I ask you a few questions? Zhou didn't open his eyes as he said, after some thought. On account that you are about to contribute your body to me, I could try my best to answer you. The masked man wasn't in a rush to attack, as though he was waiting for something. You participated in the previous Battle of Guardians, so can you tell me what the Guardians are looking for? Zhou wanted to take the opportunity to probe into some secrets. There were so many powerful life forms in the dimension that wanted something from Earth, but up to now, Zhou still didn't know what they wanted. If you were to ask the other Guardians this question, I'm afraid none of them would know even if you asked 99 of them. However, since you asked me, you've asked the right question. I'm the only Guardian among the 100 who knows. The masked man's answer delighted Zhou. What is it? Zhou pressed. I don't know what it is, the masked man answered. The corners of Zhou's eyes twitched as he had the urge to slap him to death. The masked man seemed to appreciate Zhou's expression as he said with a faint smile, Of course, I don't know. This is because even the big shots of the dimensional races don't know what they are looking for. However, there's a clue. Not many Guardians know this clue, and I'm one of them. What clue? Zhou pressed. Companion beast, the most powerful companion beast, the masked man said. Chapter 10:26. Companion beasts? Aren't dimensional creatures unable to use companion beasts? Why do they need companion beasts? Zhou was puzzled. Who told you that dimensional creatures can't use companion beasts? The masked man curled his lips and said, They just can't use the companion beasts on Earth. In the dimension, there are many powerful companion beasts. They're just a little different from the companion beasts on Earth. Furthermore, they're far stronger than the companion beasts on Earth. Since the companion beasts of the dimension are stronger than the companion beasts on Earth, why are they searching for companion beasts on Earth? Zhou was even more puzzled. This world is very unique. It's so unique that all dimensional creatures can't understand it. The masked man pondered for a moment before continuing. It's impossible to create something out of nothing in any dimension. Even if it's only in theory, it's impossible to do such a thing. However, on Earth, humans have done it. Humans can create something out of nothing? Why don't I know about it? Zhou thought for a moment. Earth didn't have such powerful technology. Yes, every human can do it. The masked man smiled at Zhou. You could do it too. What's that? Zhou still couldn't figure out how he could create something out of nothing. The masked man raised a hand and pressed his head with his finger. It's the imagination of the brain. In all the dimensions, there's no such thing as ghosts and gods. Only Earth has imaginary products like ghosts and gods. Isn't this creating something out of nothing? What's even stranger is that these ghosts and gods and human illusions can actually be found in the dimension. This is a mystery that has yet to be explained. The theory of ghosts and gods originated from humans' fear of nature. It's just that humans have a rich imagination. Perhaps it doesn't mean anything. Or perhaps, when dimensional creatures descended on Earth in the past, humans saw them and treated them as ghosts and gods, resulting in their legends. It's not strange to find corresponding creatures in the dimension, Zhou said. No, that's not the case. In fact, you don't know that outside this world, there's an area between the dimension and this world. That area can nurture many dimensional creatures. The dimensional creatures in Earth's dimensional zones come from there, not from the dimension. The masked man continued. What's even stranger is that some powerful dimensional creatures once spent a lot of energy and effort to study the region where dimensional creatures were born. They discovered something very strange. What strange thing? Zhou obviously knew of such a place. Not only did he know of it, but he had also been there. The dimensional creatures born there are highly overlapping with the creatures you humans have imagined. Furthermore, there were originally no dimensional creatures there. After you humans used your imagination to create them, there were also corresponding dimensional creatures born there. How can you be sure that dimensional creatures were born after humans used their imagination to create them? Perhaps humans have long imagined it, but you just haven't discovered it in the past. Zhou attempted to analyze. This isn't difficult to prove. This is because 1,000 years ago, humans didn't have firearms. And the dimensional creatures born in that area wouldn't have firearms either. When pistols appeared among you humans, some dimensional creatures were actually born with weapons like pistols. Although there are very few of them, and they're very rare, this is a fact. Is that so? Joan was somewhat surprised. I don't know if there are many such things in modern times, but before I fell asleep, such a situation had indeed happened. The masked man continued. There are still many strange things about Earth. For example, even powerful existences at the apocalypse stage will have their strength weakened to the level of ordinary mythical creatures after they descend into this world. Another example is that only the human body can break through to the level above the terregrade in this world. These are all very unscientific. In theory, this world is a low-level world compared to the dimension. Low-level creatures can't restrict high-level creatures. Even if they can't withstand the descent of high-level creatures, they will only be destroyed by high-level powers and not restrict high-level creatures. However, up until I fell asleep, no expert has been able to destroy the rules of this world. What does this mean? It means that Earth isn't a low-level world. Is it possible that it's higher than the dimension? Joan said. That's right. Those dimensional experts have the same considerations. However, if this world is a high-level world, there will definitely be high-level life forms. However, there are no such life forms on Earth. Apart from Earth, there are no life forms on the other planets. Therefore, those big shots want to find the answer. When the masked man said that, he revealed a strange smile. The smile sent a chill down Joan's spine as he had an ominous feeling. Have they found the answer? Joan asked nervously. More or less. According to their speculations, this world might very well have an extremely powerful companion beast born. As for you humans and the other dimensional creatures, they are just companion creatures of that companion beast, the masked man said with a smile. Joan was somewhat puzzled when he heard that. He frowned and asked, why would a companion beast be born and not a dimensional creature? I don't know about that. You have to ask those dimensional bigwigs. This is what they speculated. Furthermore, they speculate that once that companion beast is born, this world will be destroyed, the masked man continued. Why? Joan was even more puzzled. I don't know either because I only heard the news and don't know the process of their deduction. However, this matter is already the consensus of the various races in the dimension. They're vying for control of this place to find that companion beast and take it for themselves. Once the companion beast is found, this world will be doomed. The masked man looked up at the sky and said, time's up. It's time for you to set off. I hope you have a good time before you die. After all, I don't wish for this body to have any unpleasant memories after using your body. What time's up? Joan asked the masked man. The time of death. The masked man didn't look at Joan. He continued looking up at the sky at a 45-degree angle, waiting for the moment Joan died. However, as time passed, Joan stood there without any changes. He didn't show any signs of dying. As for the masked man, his neck seemed to ache as his expression stiffened. Chapter 10:27. Joan knew what the masked man meant by that time was up. He had already been in the garden for an hour. Under normal circumstances, he should have been killed by the 1-hour time limit in the garden. Although Joan didn't know how he would die in reality, he believed that the masked man only wanted his body. A complete corpse was the most suitable. Unfortunately, Joan had the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder. The time limit here couldn't kill him. The masked man looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle. It was very handsome, but after a while, he couldn't maintain it. You actually have the ability to restrain taboo powers. How surprising. This is a very rare stat. I'm becoming more and more satisfied with your body, the masked man said. Thank you for acknowledging my body, but I'm sorry. I also think this body isn't bad. I have no intention of giving it up. As Joan spoke, he suddenly summoned the invisibility cloak and wore it. At the same time, he released Ice Maiden from the chaos bead. Demonic Neonate was also summoned by Joan. He carried her in his arms, and quickly retreated. As Zhou had to maintain the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder state to prevent himself from being killed by the taboo powers here, he couldn't use teleportation. Ice Maiden had been trapped in the chaos bead by Zhou for several days. She was already gritting her teeth in hatred. Now that she was suddenly released, she immediately felt a strange force descend on her, suppressing her body and strength. With a sweep of her gaze, Ice Maiden immediately understood something. She summoned the Ice Castle and used its power to protect her, preventing her from having her Terragrade strength directly reduced by Earth's power. The Ice Castle landed and immediately smashed the garden into smithereens. When the masked man saw Zhou suddenly vanish, Ice Maiden and the Ice Castle instantly appear and smash the garden into smithereens. He imagined that Ice Maiden was a helper summoned by Zhou. The masked man's eyes turned cold. The eye sockets of the mask seemed to have a strange magic power that attracted Ice Maiden's soul. Ice Maiden's gaze involuntarily looked at the masked man's eyes. However, she knew that this wasn't her own will. Ice Maiden was alarmed as well. She imagined that the masked man had been hired by Zhou to kill her, so she immediately entered a terror state. Her entire body turned into an ice crystal as a terrifying cold wave emitted from her body. Instantly, the entire garden turned into an ice kingdom, freezing the masked man in ice. "How dare you flaunt ice elemental terror powers in front of me?" The masked man's cold voice came from the ice block. Cracks appeared on the ice block, and it quickly shattered. The next moment, the masked man's figure disappeared. The Ice Maiden immediately raised an ice barrier to protect her body. As for terrifying invisible blades, they crisscrossed and slashed at the ice barrier, quickly shattering it. As for the masked man's mask, it kept appearing in her mind, making her want to look at the mask. The Ice Maiden was alarmed. The masked man's terrifying strength exceeded her expectations. She never expected Zhou to find such a terrifying person to deal with her. Without any hesitation, the Ice Maiden moved and took out the heaven-shrouding bell from the ice castle. She held it in her hand and shook it violently. The masked man was shaken by the sound of the heaven-shrouding bell and revealed himself. He even staggered a few steps, and a grave expression appeared on his face. A strange gray light suffused the mask, making his face look even more ferocious. Zhou couldn't rush out of the garden and could only hide from afar. However, the invisibility cloak only lasted 3 minutes. Once 3 minutes passed, the masked man and Ice Maiden would be able to find him. Little Neonate, find an opportunity and kill that masked fellow first. Zhou communicated with demonic Neonate with his mind. Demonic Neonate remained motionless in his arms. It looked like she felt that the masked man wasn't easy to deal with and was waiting for an opportunity. The Ice Maiden and the masked man fought outside. The heaven-shrouding bell and the mask erupted with strange powers. All Zhou saw was dazzling light flashing, preventing him from seeing their battle clearly. This situation was similar to the situation after Zhou entered the dimension. He could only use Truth Listener's ability to vaguely hear the battle situation. The heaven-shrouding bell was very powerful, but the Ice Maiden's strength seemed insufficient. After shaking the heaven-shrouding bell twice, she failed to kill the masked man. Her strength began to weaken. As for the masked man's strength, it didn't show any signs of weakening. Is the masked man that strong? Zhou was alarmed. He originally imagined that the Ice Maiden was a dimensional creature after all, so she should be strong enough. He never expected that she couldn't suppress the masked man with the heaven-shrouding bell. Although the heaven-shrouding bell is very strong, you are too weak. You can't truly unleash its might. Give it to me, and I can spare your life. The masked man actually had the intention of snatching the heaven-shrouding bell. The gray light on the mask intensified as his eye sockets seemed to have endless abysses. The Ice Maiden's mind was gradually attracted by it. She couldn't resist the urge to look at the mask. The Ice Maiden clearly could tell that the masked man had the bloodline of a human and a guardian. She said coldly, "How can a bastard have designs on the heaven-shrouding bell? You are an ice demon. You might not necessarily have a noble bloodline. At the very least, My strength is above yours. If I want you to live, you will live. If I want you to die, you will die. The masked man moved like a phantom in the world of ice and snow. When the Ice Maiden's frost power struck him, it only hit an illusion. The Ice Maiden's eyes became less and less determined. Hand over the heaven-shrouding bell now, and you still have a chance of survival. The masked man's figure appeared on the ice, as though he had appeared in a mirror. The Ice Maiden's gaze began to uncontrollably look at the masked man's figure on the ice as the frost power began to weaken. Ice Maiden doesn't seem to be able to hold on any longer. Joan couldn't help but worry when he saw that demonic neonate hadn't taken action. This was because the 3 minutes of invisibility were almost up. At that moment, the ice glow on the Ice Maiden's body erupted as an ice crystal crown formed on her head. Her body became increasingly transparent and was almost invisible. At the same time, the Ice Maiden shook the heaven-shrouding bell in her hand. Ice Demon King's bloodline. The masked man revealed a look of surprise. Just as he finished speaking, everything in the garden was shattered by the power of the heaven-shrouding bell. The masked man, who bore the brunt of the attack, slid backward in the garden before slamming into the garden's wall. He collapsed the wall and was buried inside. After this strike, the Ice Maiden's body immediately entered a weakened state. She couldn't maintain her terrifying state and return to her normal state. However, there was no joy on the Ice Maiden's face. In the collapsed wall, the masked man slowly stood up. Chapter 10:28. The masked man's face was intact, but his clothes were tattered, making him look like a beggar. However, from the damaged parts of his clothes, one could see that his skin was crystalline like jade. There were some strange red spots that quickly disappeared. From the looks of it, my body is really old. If I were at my peak, such strength wouldn't even be able to damage my clothes. Now, I'm actually injured. The human body is indeed too weak. The masked man walked out step by step. The mask on his face seemed to be enveloped by a mysterious fog, as it emitted an endless, terrifying aura. He was like a devil that had walked out of hell. Even the Ice Maiden's expression changed. You have an S-class terror form? The Ice Maiden stared at the masked man and asked through gritted teeth. As expected of the Ice Demon King's descendant. You have some good eyesight. If it wasn't for my body being too old, your strength wouldn't even be able to injure me, the masked man said indifferently, but he still walked towards the Ice Maiden. The masked man said indifferently, but he still walked towards the Ice Maiden. The closer he was to her, the more she couldn't take her eyes off the mask. Ice Maiden, give me the heaven-shrouding bell. Joan suddenly appeared not far from the Ice Maiden. The 3 minutes of invisibility had passed, and he could no longer hide his body. When the Ice Maiden heard Joan's voice, the hatred in her heart exceeded the mask's influence on her. She subconsciously turned her head to look at Joan as she raised the heaven-shrouding bell in her hand. Her actions showed that she wanted to use the heaven-shrouding bell to deal with Joan. But in the masked man's eyes, it was as though she was really going to obediently give the heaven-shrouding bell to Joan. The masked man instantly arrived in front of the Ice Maiden and extended his hand to grab the heaven-shrouding bell. Without giving the Ice Maiden a chance to react, he had already grabbed the heaven-shrouding bell. The Ice Maiden wanted to resist, but her strength was ultimately inferior to the masked man's. The masked man snatched the heaven-shrouding bell away. At the instant the masked man succeeded, his expression suddenly changed drastically. Demonic neonate, who was in her terror form, appeared above the masked man's head with a demonic sword in hand. The demonic sword slashed at the mask. Crack! The mask was sliced apart by the demonic sword, leaving a hole in the middle. Puffed. The masked man spat out a mouthful of blood as his body flew backward. The heaven-shrouding bell he had just snatched was snatched back by demonic neonate. The demonic infant held the heaven-shrouding bell in one hand and the demonic sword in the other as she charged at the masked man. Joan couldn't see her figure at all, but he could see that the mask on the masked man's face had been slashed open. It looked like it was about to shatter. Kacha! The mask finally could not withstand the terrifying destructive force and shattered into pieces. The masked man's face, which was extremely similar to Lance's, was revealed once again. However, his face was completely drained of blood, and he was coughing up blood. His body was rapidly aging, and in the blink of an eye, he went from looking like a young man to looking like a middle-aged man. More and more wrinkles appeared on his body, and before long, he looked like an old man. Companion beast. Terrifying companion beast. How was this possible? The masked man's body slammed into the wall, creating a hole in it. His body was trapped inside, but his eyes looked in disbelief at demonic neonate who had stabbed his sword into his glabella. It was as though he had seen a ghost. From the looks of it, you won't be able to use my body. Do you have anything to say before you die? If you have any unfulfilled wishes and it's not too troublesome, I'll help you, Joan said as he looked at the masked man from afar. Although the masked man's mask had been shattered and the demonic sword had stabbed into his skull, he didn't immediately die. Joan didn't dare approach him to prevent himself from suffering a backlash. The masked man didn't move, but Ice Maiden suddenly moved. With a terrifying ice beam, she was about to hit Joan. However, just as she moved, a behemoth rushed out from the calabash in Joan's hand. 7 strange, dragon-like tentacles spewed out white liquid that blocked Ice Maiden's ice beam. At the same time, it wrapped around her body. Another Terrorgrade. Ice Maiden was already speechless from shock. She already understood that she had fallen for Joan's evil trick and helped him as a fighter. However, while demonic neonate was dealing with the masked man, she originally believed that it wouldn't be difficult for her to kill Joan with all her remaining strength. However, she never expected Joan to have a Terrorgrade creature. Originally, the 7 Seas Dragon King was an Ice Maiden's match. Furthermore, the ice element restrained the 7 Seas Dragon King. However, Ice Maiden had expended too much of her strength. She probably had less than 30% of her combat strength left. How could she be a match for the 7 Seas Dragon King? Is this really Earth? Ice Maiden couldn't believe that a human would have a Terrorgrade companion beast. Furthermore, he had a Terrorgrade creature loyal to him. This was unimaginable. Seeing that Ice Maiden was also restrained, her body was wrapped around the 7 Seas Dragon King's tentacles and covered in white liquid, preventing her from escaping. Joan finally heaved a sigh of relief. The masked man suddenly laughed strangely. As he laughed, he said crazily, "Interesting, this is really interesting. A mere human actually has a Terrorgrade companion beast, and can even order a terror creature to do things. This is really interesting. Only a body like this is worthy of me, the bizarre god. Your body is mine. Are you dreaming?" As Joan spoke, he ordered demonic neonate inwardly to kill the masked man as soon as possible. Demonic neonate mercilessly pulled out the demonic sword as the blood and brain matter in the masked man's head spewed out. Without any hesitation, demonic neonate brandished her sword again and split open Bizarre God's head. As for Grim Demon in the demonic sword, it rushed out and excitedly opened its mouth to swallow Bizarre God's corpse. With a few bites, it swallowed everything. After devouring Bizarre God's corpse, the demonic aura on Grim Demon's body surged. It looked like it was about to evolve. Demonic neonate waved her hand, and Grim Demon returned to the demonic sword. The demonic sword automatically returned to its scabbard and returned to her hand. That's Guardian, a companion beast guardian. Ice Maiden was already dumbfounded. She couldn't believe what she had seen today and felt like she was dreaming. An epic human had a Terrorgrade companion beast, and this companion beast actually had a guardian. What was going on? It was like a fantasy. Even in her dreams, Ice Maiden had never imagined such a thing. This guy, is he really human? Ice Maiden had already given up struggling as she looked at Joe in a daze. However, no matter how she looked at him, he was only an epic human. Chapter 1029. Deep underground in Frost City, a white-haired, white-bearded man walked out of an ice cavern. The agreement has finally been rescinded. Fraud was so excited that he almost roared at the sky. Although he had obtained what he wanted from the deal with Bizarre God, he had still been tricked in the end. His body had fused with the ice and become an undead iceman. Now that Bizarre God had obtained the body he wanted, the agreement had finally been completed. Fraud had finally regained his freedom. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Fraud immediately walked out of the ice cavern. The moment he saw the sky and the sun, he narrowed his eyes. The long-awaited sun made him so excited that he almost cried. How many years has it been? How many years has it been? I'm finally back. Fraud can finally stand at the peak of the earth again. Fraud suppressed the excitement in his heart and muttered to himself with a trembling voice. Father, you. Gaiman couldn't believe his eyes when he saw Fraud. Gaiman had rushed back to Frost City with his men to ask Fraud about this matter as soon as possible. However, now that he saw Fraud return to his human form and walk out of the ice cavern, there was no need to ask any more questions. He knew that the masked man's words weren't wrong. Gaiman, where's Lance? Did he come back? Fraud immediately grabbed Gaiman's arm and asked when he saw him. He's back. That masked man chose Zhou. Gaiman said with a complicated expression. He was naturally very happy that Lance wouldn't die, but as the price, Zhou had sacrificed himself. Fraud wanted to be happy, but he couldn't. Fraud's actions were actually different from his ideals. I knew that fellow would definitely choose Zhou. That's good. That's good. Lance has been saved, and I've regained my freedom. This is a joyous occasion for our family. Prepare some alcohol. I want to drink. Fraud became even more excited. Gaiman thought for a moment and sighed. Father, Zhou said that he's a person who distinguishes between gratitude and grudges. He'll come for you. Fraud laughed. Come for me? I'm afraid it'll be his next life. He has no idea how terrifying that Bizarre God is. Even the top humans are like ants in front of Bizarre God. Bizarre God only needed a single thought to kill as many people as he wanted. Although Zhou is indeed very strong, he's still far from that level. Or rather, it's a power that humans can't reach. All right, let's not talk about this anymore. Go prepare the wine. It's been so many years since I've tasted wine. Now that I've finally recovered my human body and saved Lance, I have to celebrate today. Fraud felt a little elated when he thought of the fragrance of the wine. His saliva kept secreting. After he became an Iceman, he lost his sense of taste and was unable to eat. Furthermore, he was trapped in the ice cave. The only place he could move was the ice cave. Although his relatives would occasionally come to visit him, the feeling was still very unbearable, almost driving him crazy. Fraud was an alcoholic to begin with. After enduring for so many years, he only wanted to drink to his heart's content. As for Zhou, he was no longer in his consideration. After all, Zhou wasn't his descendant. It didn't matter if he died. Gaiman sighed inwardly and didn't say anything else. He went to prepare food and wine for Fraud. After all, it was indeed a good thing for the ultimate family clan that Fraud could come back to life. Zhou, what a pity. Gaiman shook his head inwardly. Under such circumstances, Zhou could still think of saving Lance. Gaiman felt that Lance was lucky to have such a friend. Gaiman ordered someone to prepare the best food and wine for Fraud. At the same time, he arranged for the core members of the family to meet him. As the news of Fraud's revival still needed to be kept a secret, he couldn't tell everyone in the ultimate family clan about Fraud's revival. He only let a few core members know about it. Fraud sat in front of the table and watched as all sorts of roasted meat and fish were served. His gastric juices secreted crazily, almost melting his entire stomach. Where's the wine? I want the wine. Quickly bring it over, Fraud shouted. Coming. Gaiman took the liquor he had treasured. This is the smell. This is the smell. How many years has it been? I can finally drink it again. Fraud took the wine and immediately opened it to take a sniff. He hadn't drunk it yet, but the smell of the wine made him so happy that he was almost drunk. Where's Lance? Why don't I see him? Fraud was just about to drink when he suddenly thought of Lance. Lance was the descendant he valued the most. At such a happy occasion, Lance should be present. Lance suffered some minor injuries and is resting. Gaiman didn't mention that Lance refused to leave and wanted to compensate Zhou with his life. It was rare for Fraud to be so happy. Furthermore, Zhou was already dead. Lance should be able to get over it sooner or later. There was no need to make Fraud unhappy at such a time. Are his injuries serious? Fraud asked with a frown. It's fine. He'll be fine after resting for half a day, Gaiman said. That's good. When Fraud smelled the fragrance of roasted meat and alcohol, he was already drooling. He couldn't wait any longer, so he didn't hesitate any longer. He held the bottle and couldn't wait to pour it out. He wanted to pour it into his mouth. Today is the day I, Fraud, am reborn. Fraud was overjoyed, but he suddenly felt the bottle in his hand be pulled out of his palm by a huge force. He opened his mouth, but he didn't even taste a drop of alcohol. Who is it? Fraud was extremely furious. He slammed his palm on the table and glared over. However, when he looked over, Fraud's eyes widened as his pupils constricted. His body trembled. Gaiman and company turned their heads as well. With this look, Gaiman exclaimed, Zhou, you aren't dead. Zhou held the bottle in Fraud's hand as he stood in front of the door with a calm expression. Bizarre God. You're a bizarre God, right? From the looks of it, you have already obtained a new life. Congratulations. Fraud stood up and put on a smile as he bowed at Zhou. He naturally believed that Zhou's body had been occupied by Bizarre God. Only then did Gaiman come to a realization. He carefully sized up Zhou and lamented inwardly. However, Zhou didn't look at the respectful Fraud. He looked at Gaiman and said, Did you deliver the message I asked you to deliver to Fraud? I've already conveyed all your words to Father. Your previous agreement with him has been completed. Gaiman said. That's not what I said, Zhou said. This is what you wanted me to. Gaiman wanted to say something when a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. Although even he didn't dare believe such a thing and believe that it was a delusion, he couldn't help but have this thought when he looked at Zhou. Chapter 10:30. Bizarre God, if you have anything to say, you can tell me directly now. There's no need to go through anyone else. Although Fraud felt that Bizarre God was somewhat strange and had some doubts, he never expected that Bizarre God hadn't obtained Zhou's body. The person who had returned was the real Zhou. It wasn't that Fraud wasn't sinister and cunning enough, but that he understood Bizarre God's strength too well. He had long formed the notion that Bizarre God was invincible. It was difficult to reverse the situation instantly. Mr. Gaiman, did you pass on my words to him? Zhou ignored Fraud and continued speaking to Gaiman. When Gaiman heard Zhou's tone, he was increasingly certain of his guess. His voice trembled as he looked at Zhou and said, You are Zhou. Fraud jolted when he heard Gaiman's words. Before this, he had never thought of such a possibility, but Zhou's tone and demeanor seemed to be somewhat different from the Bizarre God he knew. Impossible. How can a human defeat Bizarre God? No matter how many mythical companion beasts he has, it's useless. It's impossible for a human to win. Fraud couldn't accept such a possibility deep down. Who else can I be if not Zhou? Zhou said calmly. The moment that was said, everyone was alarmed. Fraud's body trembled as he looked at Zhou with a strange look. How did you escape? Fraud looked at Zhou in surprise. He naturally refused to believe that Zhou could defeat Bizarre God. He only imagined that Zhou had used some strange ability to luckily escape the maze of lies. However, Zhou continued ignoring Fraud. He looked at Gaiman and continued asking, Did you tell him what I asked you to relay? Yes. Gaiman answered with a strange expression. That's good. Zhou nodded before looking at Fraud and saying, Fraud, since you've already relayed the message, there's no need for me to say anything else. Do you want to end it yourself? Or do you want me to do it? Fraud's expression darkened as he stared at Zhou and said, I've indeed let you down on this matter. However, since you escaped, I can give you some compensation and settle some matters. From the looks of it, you want me to take action? Zhou said to Fraud. Zhou, this is the ultimate family clan. There's no benefit in fighting me here. Anyway, you won't suffer any losses. I can give you a mythical companion egg as compensation. This matter will end here. This will benefit both of us, Fraud said indifferently. Joan pondered for a moment and didn't say a word. Thinking that he was already tempted, Fraud continued, "You don't need to pay any price to obtain a mythical chaotic companion and my friendship. This will be of great help to you in the future. Fraud, you sold me and even your bloodline to Bizarre God in order to escape the ice cavern, right?" Joan suddenly interrupted Fraud. Fraud's expression turned a little ugly, but he still said, "Even if I don't send him in, Bizarre God will rush out of the maze of lies when the time comes. When the time comes, it will only bring about an even greater disaster. In other words, you used me to exchange for a chance to escape from the ice cavern and regain your freedom?" Joan asked again, "What exactly are you trying to say?" Fraud was already somewhat impatient. "I'm a very fair person. Since you used me to exchange for freedom, I'll take back what belongs to me and send you back into the ice cavern," Joan said calmly. "Who do you think you are? You are only a human, not Bizarre God. Apart from God, no one can defeat me, Fraud. Even the Hero King from back then couldn't do so." Fraud found it difficult to control his emotions when he heard the words, ice cavern. He had endured for so many years and finally escaped the ice cavern with great difficulty. He had recovered and become a normal person, but he hadn't even had a sip of alcohol. He definitely wouldn't return to such a place. Fraud knew that Joan was very strong. From his point of view, Joan's ability to escape from Bizarre God was a very terrifying ability. However, no matter how strong Joan was, he was only a human. He ultimately had his limits. With his strength and the ultimate family clan's present heritage, there was no need to be afraid of Joan. He had even secretly decided that even if he had to pay a price, he would kill Joan here to eliminate this future threat. Ice Maiden. Joan had no intention of wasting his breath on Fraud as he called out Ice Maiden's name. At that moment, everyone realized that there was a beautiful young woman standing outside the door. Her expression was as cold as ice, as though someone owed her a lot of money. Yes, Ice Maiden walked through the door and bowed to Joan. In the maze of lies, Ice Maiden had been forced to sign an unfair contract with Joan. She could only listen to Joan's orders. Throw him into the ice, but don't let him die. Don't let him escape either. Furthermore, he has to remain conscious. Can you do that? Joan said. Yes, Ice Maiden answered with certainty. Then do it. This is what he owes me. Mr. Gaiman, don't you think so? Joan asked Gaiman. Fraud was already enraged. Joan had a powerful companion beast, so he didn't dare underestimate him. It would have been fine if Joan had taken action personally, but now Joan had actually gotten a servant to take action. Furthermore, she was such a young woman. This was no longer contempt, but an insult to him. From the looks of it, Fraud, haven't appeared for many years. The world has already forgotten how powerful the hero of ice was. Without waiting for Gaiman to answer, Fraud spoke first. At the same time, a terrifying ice aura erupted from his body. At the same time, he summoned a frost dragon. It prostrated at his feet as its body suffused an extremely terrifying cold aura. The frost dragon was a top-notch ice elemental mythical companion beast. It matched Fraud's ice elemental essence energy perfectly. With the mutual enhancement, their strength greatly increased. Back then, Bizarre God was only able to turn me into an iceman by using a trick to trigger my own power of ice. It wasn't that his power of ice surpassed mine. I want to see how you will seal me in ice again, Fraud said coldly. Ice Maiden wasn't in the mood to speak to Fraud. She glanced at him and shot out an icy beam from her eyes. The icy beam instantly landed on Fraud and the frost dragon. In an instant, Fraud and the frost dragon he was riding were frozen into ice sculptures. The entire process was too fast, so fast that Gaiman and company couldn't react in time. They watched helplessly as Fraud and the frost dragon turned into ice sculptures. Even Fraud himself maintained his proud posture, but his eyes were filled with boundless fear. How is this possible? A top ice elemental mythical creature, the frost dragon, has actually been frozen into an ice sculpture? Gaiman and the other members of the Ultimate Family Clan knew how powerful an ice elemental companion beast was. It wasn't surprising that a mythical creature could defeat a frost dragon, but it was terrifying to use the power of ice to freeze a frost dragon. Chapter 1031. Who is that woman? She actually has such a terrifying power of ice. Could she be the legendary goddess of ice? Otherwise, how could she freeze a top ice elemental mythical companion beast like the frost dragon into an ice sculpture with just a glance? Such a woman is actually Zhou Wen's subordinate. Father, what kind of person did you plot against? Gaiman's heart was filled with bitterness. He wanted to save his father, but he was afraid that he would bring destruction to the ultimate family clan. Even the frost dragon had been frozen into ice by that woman's casual glance. If he were to anger Zhou Wen, Gaiman really didn't know what the consequences would be. However, he knew very well that not only could he not bear the consequences, but the entire ultimate family clan couldn't bear it. The core members of the ultimate family clan present were also stunned, momentarily at a loss for what to do. If they had reason, they would still have the courage to fight to the death, but now, they didn't even have a reason to convince themselves to fight to the death. Zhou Wen looked at the frozen fraud and asked Ice Maiden, "Is it possible for this ice to be melted or shattered? His body has already been frozen by me. Unless his strength is stronger than mine, it's impossible to melt or shatter the ice. However, if that's the case, the person inside will melt or shatter as well. However, as long as the ice isn't destroyed, he won't die," Ice Maiden answered. Very good. Zhou Wen was very satisfied with this answer. On Earth, it was very difficult to find a creature stronger than Ice Maiden. Furthermore, even if he was stronger than Ice Maiden and could shatter the ice, it wouldn't allow Fraud to live. Zhou Wen, on account of Lance and Sadie. Gaiman knew that using force wouldn't work, so he could only persuade Zhou Wen. If it weren't for them, do you think he would be alone in the ice? Zhou Wen looked at Gaiman and interrupted him. Gaiman felt his heart turn cold, but he couldn't say anything else. Zhou Wen poured the wine in the bottle in front of Fraud's ice sculpture and said indifferently, "Continue the rest of your life in the ice. I hope you can live a little longer." With that said, Zhou Wen turned around and left. Ice Maiden followed behind Zhou Wen like a maidservant. The top experts of the ultimate family clan were basically here, but no one dared to stop Zhou Wen. They could only watch helplessly as they left. "No, don't go. Let me out. Please, let me out. Bastard. Kill me if you have the guts. Don't leave. Please. Let me out. I haven't even had a sip of alcohol. Let me out." Fraud roared crazily in his heart. In the past, when he turned into an iceman, he could at least move around in the ice cavern. But now, he couldn't even blink his eyes. He was like a statue with a will. It was even more painful than killing Fraud. He would rather die than live like this. "Kill me. Kill me." Fred almost went crazy, but no one could hear his thoughts. Gaiman and company gathered all the ice elemental experts in the ultimate family clan to remove the ice, but no one could melt even a drop of water. Unbeknownst to them, this was a Terragrade frost power. Unless one also reached the Terragrade, even if they threw ice into the Inferno, they wouldn't be able to melt even a drop of water. Zhou Wen didn't meet Lance, Sadie, and company. He directly contacted Wang Lu, Feng Qiuyan, and Li Xian before leaving Frost City. Although Zhou Wen wanted revenge, the other party was ultimately Lance and Sadie's kin. Meeting them under such circumstances would only make both parties awkward, so it was better not to meet them. However, this way, Zhou Wen didn't know that the unconscious Lance was undergoing a strange change. A strange power was surging out of his brain, causing his body to undergo a strange change. Bizarre God had previously said that only Lance was of Fraud's bloodline. This was very contradictory and complicated. There were so many people in the ultimate family clan, and in fact, many of them were of Fraud's direct bloodline. Lance wasn't very special among them. Furthermore, he was already in the third generation. Logically speaking, in terms of bloodline purity, a first generation like Gaiman should be closest to Fraud's bloodline. However, the Fraud bloodline that Bizarre God mentioned wasn't calculated in such a manner. In fact, the human body that Bizarre God had fused with belonged to Fraud. However, it wasn't the current Fraud. Instead, Bizarre God had used Fraud's genes and used human genetic technology to create a genetic clone. Although it was a genetic clone, through some of Bizarre God's means, the genetic clone's body was even more perfect and outstanding than Fraud's. However, such a genetic clone still couldn't meet Bizarre God's requirements. Therefore, he had done something to Fraud and left something on him, waiting for the birth of a perfect human body that truly suited him. As for Lance, he was the perfect human body that Bizarre God was waiting for. That was why he looked so similar to Bizarre God. Unfortunately, he had chosen Zhou 1 and abandoned his original plan. However, Lance's body had something left behind by Bizarre God. Zhou 1 and company headed for the East District. Now, Zhou was roughly certain that he probably wouldn't be able to evolve the Glimmer Life Soul if he went to a new place. He planned on returning to buy some necessities for survival in space before teleporting to another planet. This might be the final condition for Glimmer to break through to the perfect stage. After some thought, Zhou felt that it was probably the case. Otherwise, it didn't seem realistic to advance to a perfect body without using Glimmer's interstellar teleportation ability once. After the dimensional storms, aerospace technology had stagnated. Although many satellites have been launched later, they were basically used for information transmission. Humanity's exploration of the universe had long stopped. It had been a long time since humans had been able to land on the moon, much less Mars. It wasn't easy to obtain space survival equipment. However, with Zhou Wen's current strength, it wasn't difficult to obtain it. After Wang Lu's analysis, Zhou Wen decided to make a trip to the Special Inspection Bureau. It was time to collect some debts. He could also obtain some space equipment as interest. According to Wang Lu, the Special Inspection Bureau had participated in many rocket launches. As satellites were basically unaffected by the anomalies on Earth, they were very useful for observing various parts of Earth. Many pieces of information were obtained using satellites. Chapter 1032. Shinyuchi had been in a good mood recently. Although he had suffered heavy losses recently, the Bureau was still the eyes and ears of the Federation. As the anomalies in various parts of the Federation were getting worse, Shinyuchi used various channels to make up for his losses. However, the main reason why Shinyuchi was in a good mood wasn't because of this. It was because of their recent discovery on the moon. Although the Earth's anomalies were getting worse and worse, and it was disadvantageous to the development of technology, it wasn't completely without benefits. The physique of humans had greatly improved. Coupled with powerful companion beasts, their survivability in space had greatly increased. Some humans with mythical companion beasts, coupled with some space suits and other equipment, could do much more in space than before. However, there were very few people who were willing to develop the space industry. Shinyuchi was one of the more determined ones. He always believed that even in this era, technology would one day occupy an important position. This was especially so for aerospace technology. Shinyuchi had invested quite a bit in this area. More than 2 months ago, humans landed on the moon again and made a major discovery there. It discovered a dimensional zone. Furthermore, they discovered a large number of essence crystals in the dimensional zone. Apart from that, they also discovered something very strange. Shinyuchi felt that this discovery might be able to change the current situation of the Federation. As this moon landing operation was mainly promoted by the Bureau, most of the astronauts on the moon were from the Bureau, so this news was quickly blocked by Shinyuchi. This will be the foundation of the Bureau's comeback. I can't afford to make any more mistakes. Shinyuchi thought through the key details again and confirmed that he hadn't missed anything. Only then did he relax and pour himself a cup of tea. Just as he picked up the teacup and before it touched his lips, someone reported, "Director General found it." The words were unclear, but Shinyuchi was overjoyed when he heard that. He immediately got up, walked out of the office, and came to the main control room of the moon landing project. "Director General Shun, There was a message from the moon just now. We've finally found it, an old professor said excitedly. Shun Yuchi suppressed his excitement and said, "Connect the communications. I want to see that thing." Yes. The staff quickly established a communication connection with the moon. Not long after, they saw an image of a certain spot on the moon appear on the big screen. A few people in spacesuits were in a pit on the moon. In that pit, one could see quite a number of yuan crystal ores. Shin Yuchi didn't look at the primordial crystal ores at all. Although the reserves of the primordial crystal ores here weren't lower than the reserves of the Bureau's primordial crystal ores, mining and transporting them was a problem. There was no good solution for the time being. Even if all of them were dug out, it would take some time to transport them all back. In contrast, there was something in the crystal ore that caught Shin Yuchi's attention. It was a tree root, the tip of which was as thick as a finger. It twisted and meandered all the way into the crystal ore. The root was as black as ink, but there were no signs of contamination. It was clearly as black as charcoal, but it gave off a feeling of holiness. Yes, that's it. Dig it out. Shun Yuchi suppressed the excitement in his heart and gave the order. Roger that. After the astronaut received the order, he summoned a companion beast that looked like a rat but was as large as an ox. It continued digging along the roots. The companion beast was at the mythical stage. Among all the astronauts, there was only one. It was also because of its existence that these discoveries had been made. Only mythical companion beasts could survive in ordinary space environments and work normally. Although some epic creatures could barely survive, it was very difficult for them to work normally. In the beginning, Shin Yuchi only wanted to know if the moon had undergone any anomalies. If the moon hadn't undergone any anomalies, perhaps he could build a base on it in preparation for the future large-scale breakout of Earth's dimensional zones. If the Federation really couldn't hold on, there was still a way out that wasn't considered a retreat route. With humanity's current physique, as long as they could build a sealed base, it wasn't impossible to live on the moon. Of course, many resources still needed to be obtained from Earth. That was only a final guarantee. In the beginning, they didn't discover any anomalies or dimensional zones on the moon. Later, when they sampled, they discovered a primordial crystal mine. That wasn't much. While digging for samples from the primordial crystal mine, the mythical companion beast dug up something from it. It was a petal that was as white as snow without any impurities. It was as holy as a snowflake. The petal was like a fossil. It was wrapped in the primordial crystal mine, but it didn't petrify or wither. It still maintained its vibrant vitality. To be able to discover a primordial crystal mine on the moon, it wasn't a big deal to discover some plants. However, when the petal wrapped in the primordial crystal mine was taken out, something that shocked everyone happened. As they didn't know what the petal was, they took it out in a sealed environment. Furthermore, it was operated by a companion beast. The companion beast operating it wasn't of a high level. It was just a legendary nature elf. Although nature elves' level wasn't high, they looked similar to humans. They could carry out precise work, so there were many similar companion beasts in typical laboratories. The moment the nature elf touched the petal melted and was absorbed by the nature elf. In just a few hours, the nature elf advanced to the epic stage. This discovery shocked everyone. Shin Yuchi immediately ordered a lockdown on the news and continued digging in the primordial crystal mine. Indeed, he dug up a few more petals and conducted some experiments. The results of the experiments confirmed that such petals could indeed advance a companion beast. Just one petal could easily advance a legendary to the epic stage. However, as there were too few petals, there was no way to test if petals could advance an epic companion beast to the mythical stage. After some simple research on these petals, he realized that they resembled the petals of an osmanthus flower. However, he didn't know why such petals were on the moon. Shun Yuchi and many people from the East District immediately thought of a legend in the East District. In that legend, there was indeed an osmanthus tree on the moon. In order to confirm if there really was such an osmanthus tree, The mythical companion beast had been working hard to dig over the past few days. Now, they had finally gained something. If a petal has such a magical effect, what about a tree? Shin-yuchi felt his heart beating very fast just thinking about it. Chapter 1033. More and more black roots were dug out. They had already exceeded 2 meters, but there was still no end in sight. This made Shin-yuchi excited and nervous. He originally imagined that he had dug up a broken root, but from the looks of it, they had really dug up the osmanthus tree. However, there was one thing that caught Shin-yuchi's attention. When a mythical companion beast was digging, it would occasionally come into contact with the roots. However, the roots weren't absorbed like the petals, nor did any strange phenomena happen. Could it be that only the petals have such magical effects? Shin-yuchi was somewhat worried. If only the petals were effective, how many more petals were there on the osmanthus tree buried underground? However, everything was still unknown. There was no way to determine if the osmanthus tree was useless, nor did he know how many petals there were. All he could do was continue waiting for the results. The professor wanted the astronaut to cut off a portion of the roots and conduct a simple test in the space station, but even the mythical companion beast couldn't damage the roots at all. High-tech cutting equipment was used, but the result was still useless. The hardness of the roots had far exceeded the hardness of known substances. This outcome alarmed everyone, including Shin-yuchi. After all, it was a mythical companion beast. Even it couldn't injure it at all. What kind of existence was the tree? It was truly shocking. There was no other way but to continue digging. More and more roots were dug out, and they crisscrossed in a complicated manner. It looked like they had really dug up the osmanthus tree. As they dug up quite a number of petals. Apart from a small number being used for experiments and research, most of them were sealed. Seeing more and more petals collected, Shin-yuchi wished he could fly to the moon and transform into a miner to dig out all the petals. The wealth these petals could bring to the Bureau was immeasurable. Even if those petals couldn't be used to advance an epic creature to the mythical stage, the ability to advance a legendary to the epic stage was enough to create unimaginable wealth. After research, he realized that the more petals a companion beast used, the worse the effects. Different companion beasts obtained different levels of evolution with the same petals. When an epic companion beast used a petal, its stats would be enhanced to a certain extent. This could be seen from the tests. The mythical companion beast kept digging. After a period of time, it finally dug to the trunk of the osmanthus tree. The trunk was also pitch black like ink. Just the part that was dug out was probably more than 10 meters in diameter. A giant tree with a diameter of more than 10 meters. How many osmanthus flowers will there be when it blooms? Seeing the size of the tree, everyone was surprised and delighted. Even if only 1,000th of the osmanthus tree's flowers were preserved, it was still an unimaginable number. He impatiently ordered the mythical companion beast to continue digging, but before long, the companion beast realized that the tree trunk had reached its end. It's gone. How could it be gone? Shin-yuchi's expression was a little ugly. From a communication video, it could be seen that the gigantic osmanthus tree only had a stump left. The upper part seemed to have disappeared. The companion beasts did some digging in the vicinity, but they only found some scattered petals. They didn't find a broken trunk at all. On the tree stump, there were obvious saber and axe marks. It proved that this mysterious and huge osmanthus tree hadn't been broken due to a natural disaster. Instead, some creature had chopped it off. Even the power of a mythical companion beast can't injure the tiny roots at all. What kind of creature can actually chop off such a thick tree trunk? Shin-yuchi was alarmed just thinking about it. Thankfully, there were no signs of dimensional creatures nearby. Furthermore, even if the trunk was gone, there were still some scattered petals nearby. To the Bureau, being able to collect these scattered petals was already a huge fortune. Furthermore, the tree stump might be of great value. Otherwise, the mysterious creature that chopped down the osmanthus tree wouldn't have needed to take away the trunk. All it needed to do was remove the petals. There was no need to go through the trouble of chopping down the tree. The digging continued. Every day, they could dig out at least 10 petals. Sometimes they could even dig out dozens. This excited the Bureau and the researchers. After all, these petals didn't only represent epic companion beasts. Some legendary companion beasts with very useful skills or life providences couldn't be used because their levels were too low and their stats were too poor. Now, with these osmanthus flowers, they could raise those legendary companion beasts to the epic stage and make up for their stats. They might even give birth to powerful life souls. With the osmanthus flowers, it was equivalent to having infinite possibilities. Everyone felt that this lunar expedition would have a huge harvest, but on this day, when the mythical companion beast continued digging the tree stump, wanting to dig out all the parts of the tree stump and think of a way to transport it back to Earth, the mythical companion beast continued digging the tree stump. However, the communication between Earth Command Center and the Lunar Space Station was suddenly cut off. No one knew what had happened. The researchers tried all means to contact the Moon, but there was no news from the other side. They had no way of knowing what had happened. Professor, can you think of a way to use the existing satellites to film the situation of the space station and the tree stump? Shinyuchi asked the old professor. The old professor said with a heavy expression, "The location of the space station is easy to scan with satellites, but the tree stump is in a location where satellites can't capture it. Let's use the satellite to scan the space station first," Shinyuchi said. "We're already trying, but we need to wait for our satellite to reach the predetermined orbit. Otherwise, we can only use other people's satellites. I'm afraid it will leave traces," the old professor said. "How long will it take for our satellite to capture the space station?" Shinyuchi asked with a frown. "The exact time should be about 3 hours and 40 minutes, the old professor answered. "Wait." Shinyuchi pondered for a moment before spitting out a word. He didn't wish to attract anyone's attention. Time ticked by as everyone waited nervously. When the satellite reached the predetermined orbit, they immediately got busy. Soon, photos of the space station's vicinity were sent back. When they saw the photo, everyone was horrified. The entire space station base had fallen into a deep pit, and the deep pit looked like the footprints of some animal. The space station seemed to have been flattened by some creature. On the Moon, there's a terrifying dimensional creature. Everyone had an ominous thought. Chapter 1034. Zhou Wan, Wang Lu, and company headed for the imperial capital. Along the way, they encountered quite a number of breakout creatures. Unfortunately, their levels weren't too high. There was no need for him to do anything. Feng Qiuyan and Li Xian easily dispatched them. The last time Zhou Wan came to the imperial capital, he was nearly killed by Xia Jiuhuang and the Guardian in the log. He even fled Forbidden City in a sorry state and didn't even dare stay in the imperial capital for long before fleeing back. But it was different now. Ignoring demonic neonate and the Seven Seas Dragon King, just Ice Maiden, who was at the Terrorgrade, made it difficult for the Guardian in the log to touch him. After Ice Maiden was restrained by the Seven Seas Dragon King, Zhou Wan used explosive Fiend Man's Death List to get Ice Maiden to sign her name. Although it wasn't easy for Death List to be effective against the Terrorgrade Ice Maiden, Zhou Wan wasn't worried that she would turn hostile and attack. It was because the Heaven-Shrouding Bell had been taken away by the demonic infant. Previously, Zhou Wan had wanted to get the Heaven-Shrouding Bell back, but to his surprise, he realized that the Heaven-Shrouding Bell had been devoured by demonic neonate like the demonic sword, becoming a skill of demonic neonate. In other words, it had become a part of her, making it impossible to retrieve. As long as demonic neonate shook the Heaven-Shrouding Bell, no matter how ferocious the Ice Maiden was, she would obediently surrender. There was no room for resistance. As for Grim Demon in the demonic sword, he had actually begun to evolve independently after devouring Bizarre God. Zhou Wan didn't know what changes would happen to his evolution. Logically speaking, when demonic neonate evolved, as a part of the demonic sword, Grim Demon should already possess the ability to transform into a terror form. Now that it had evolved alone, It was unknown what effects it would have. The Ice Maiden didn't want me trapped in the chaos bead, so Zhou didn't force her in. Since she couldn't escape, he decided to let her move freely. After arriving at the imperial capital again, Zhou swaggered into the city with Wang Lu. He didn't deliberately hide his whereabouts. Director General, Zhou has come to the imperial capital. Before Zhou entered the imperial capital, the Bureau had already obtained information. What is he doing in the imperial capital? Shin Yuqi felt a headache coming on. In the past, he yearned for Zhou to come to the imperial capital so that he could capture him. But now, ignoring the fact that capturing Zhou was meaningless, even if it was meaningful, how many people in this world could capture him? Based on the information the Bureau currently had, even a guardian on the list might not be able to capture Zhou. Furthermore, the Bureau didn't have such a person. Pay attention to his whereabouts, but don't follow him directly. Just use the surveillance equipment network on the streets of the imperial capital. If he wants to leave your line of sight, you don't have to look for him, Shin Yuqi said after some thought. Before long, the inspector ran back and said with a strange expression, Director General, he seems to be heading towards our Bureau's headquarters. Are you sure he's coming to the Bureau? Shin Yuqi frowned. He has already passed Sky Street and is heading east. If he heads this way, the chances of him coming to our Bureau are the highest, the inspector said. East of Sky Street. From the looks of it, he really wants to come to the Bureau. Is he coming alone? Is there anyone else with him? Shin Yuqi asked again. He's also carrying a 2-year-old girl. Wang Lu, Feng Shuyan, and Li Xian, who entered the imperial capital with him, went to the Wang family and didn't follow him, the inspector hurriedly said. Zhou headed for Sky Pass. Sky Pass was a dimensional zone in the imperial capital, and it was also where the Bureau's headquarters were located. As Sky Pass was protected by a powerful dimensional zone taboo, outsiders had no way of entering alive. Even if the inspectors wanted to enter Sky Pass, they had to obtain permission from the higher-ups. They couldn't enter freely, or they would be killed by the taboo power of Sky Pass. Uncle, is Sky Pass up ahead? Zhou came to a fork and saw a middle-aged man passing by. He went over and asked, You want to go to Sky Pass? Do you know where Sky Pass is? The middle-aged man sized up Zhou in surprise. I heard that it's the Bureau's headquarters. I want to buy something there, Zhou answered. Buy something from the Bureau's headquarters? The middle-aged man was even more surprised. He looked at Zhou and asked, Do you know what the Bureau does? I'm not too sure. I just heard that there are quite a number of good things there. I want to buy some. Zhou asked again, Do you know which way to get to the Bureau? I'm about to go to the Bureau. If you want to go, let's go together. The middle-aged man said to Zhou with interest. Thank you. Zhou thanked him. You're welcome. It's just on the way. What do you want to buy at the Bureau? The middle-aged man was very curious. The Bureau's headquarters wasn't a good landlord. It was difficult to enter and even more difficult to leave. No one would go to such a place for no reason. If it wasn't necessary, the middle-aged man wouldn't go to the Bureau. I want to buy some space equipment, Zhou said. The middle-aged man was even more interested when he heard that. He said to Zhou, Are you interested in space exploration? I'm not too interested. I just want to travel to the sky, Zhou answered. Travel. When the middle-aged man heard that, he shook his head and said with a bitter smile, The current space technology hasn't developed to the point where we can casually travel to space. However, with the improvement of human physique, only astronauts who have undergone strict training can go to space in the past. Now, as long as one is at the legendary stage, it won't be too much of a problem even if they don't train. However, it would be a waste to expend so much manpower and resources just to travel. Are you an expert in this area? Zhou sized up the middle-aged man and asked. I can't be considered an expert. I can only be considered a businessman. My family's company specializes in the production of space suits for astronauts, the middle-aged man said. Space suit? Then does your company sell equipment like space capsules that can allow ordinary people to survive in space for a period of time? Zhou asked in surprise. No, that kind of thing involves too much technology. I can't do it. Our company's space suits are all right. If you're interested, you can visit our company later. It's best not to go to a place like the bureau, the middle-aged man said. Uncle, how should I address you? Why are you going to the bureau? Zhou sized up the middle-aged man and asked. As the middle-aged man walked, he roughly explained his situation. His name was Tang Zhizhong. Previously, the bureau had always been cooperating with their company. The space suits they used were all custom-made product from their company. All these years, their space suits had never had any problems. Their research team had also been researching and developing better and more practical space suits. They could be said to be the top space suit manufacturer in the Federation. However, some time ago, the cooperation between the Bureau and them had been terminated. They had switched to using another company's products. Even a batch of spacesuits that they had previously ordered had been rejected for all sorts of reasons. Tang Zhizhong originally thought that there was a problem with his products, but after asking around, he realized that it wasn't the case. Chapter 1035. Another company seemed to have used their connections to obtain an order from the Bureau. Tang Zhizhong also found another company's spacesuits to do a comparison test and realized that their spacesuits were far inferior to his own. This made Tang Zhizhong very angry. Furthermore, if they didn't accept the batch of spacesuits that the Bureau had ordered, it would have a huge impact on Tang Zhizhong's company. It might even close down. There weren't many companies in the technology industry, and it was very difficult for them to survive. Tang Zhizhong had come this time because he hoped that the Bureau could follow the contract and accept the batch of spacesuits. It didn't matter even if they didn't cooperate in the future. Sigh, it's getting harder and harder to do technology companies these days. If I can survive this crisis, I'm prepared to close down. There's no future if I continue. Even if I don't close down this time, I will still close down in the future. Young people these days only want to interdimensional zones to obtain companion beasts. No one's dream is to explore the universe, Tang Zhizhong said with a sigh. How long can your company's space suits last in space? Zhou asked. That depends on the environment. There are many terrifying phenomena in space. Even wearing a space suit isn't of much use. Now, the main use is in places like the moon and space station. If it's a relatively safe area on the moon, as long as there's enough oxygen, food, and water to support it, typically speaking, there won't be any problems with the spacesuits I create for a year or two. As long as the life support system isn't destroyed, there's no need to worry about survival. When Tang Zhizhong mentioned the spacesuit, he immediately became extremely confident. Can I eat and drink while wearing a spacesuit? Zhou asked Tang Zhizhong. At the same time, he thought to himself, going to the moon seems like a good idea. I can use the chaos bead to bring enough oxygen, food, and water. It won't be difficult to last a month on it. Of course, our company has been constantly researching and improving spacesuits. Eating, drinking, and defecating can be done in the spacesuit. However, the premise is that there are enough supplies. The spacesuit's life support system can't carry that much. As the two of them spoke, they arrived outside Skypass. How many spacesuits did the Bureau order from you? Zhou asked. 110, Tang Zhizhong answered. Where are those spacesuits now? As Zhou asked, he sent Wang Lu a message to get her to check on Tang Zhizhong's company. It's still in the warehouse. The Bureau has found all sorts of reasons to not accept it. I only hope that they accept the spacesuits now. I can even kneel and kowtow. There are so many employees in the company who are counting on the money from these spacesuits to pay their salaries, Tang Zhizhong said with a tearful expression. Many people in the Bureau know me, including Director General Shen Yuqi, Zhou said with a smile. Tang Zhizhong was delighted when he heard that. That's great. Our company is saved this time. Sir, how should I address you? What's your relationship with Director General Shen? Are you his relative? Tang Zhizhong still wanted to guess if Zhou was Shen Yuqi's son. Otherwise, how could he get the Bureau to accept his space suit so easily? To his surprise, Zhou said, Director General Shen and the people from the Bureau have wanted to capture me for a long time. My wanted poster should still be hanging on Director General Shen's wall. Are you joking? Tang Zhizhong was somewhat dumbfounded as he looked at Zhou Wen in a daze. However, Zhou Wen didn't answer. He stood in front of Sky Pass and looked at the guards on the city gate tower. Tang Zhizhong traced his gaze and saw that there were rows of inspectors standing on the city gate tower. All the guns in their hands were aimed at them. Zhou Wen, why are you here at the bureau? The person in charge of the city gate tower spoke to Zhou Wen in a condescending manner. Tang Zhizhong recognized that person. He was one of the four censors under Shen Yuqi Yuguang. Even in a place like the imperial capital, he was a famous figure. Haven't you always wanted to capture me? I'm here to surrender myself. Zhou Wen extended his hands as though he was waiting to be handcuffed. Tang Zhizhong was already stunned. Even a fool could tell that Zhou Wen was really a wanted criminal of the bureau. However, how could a wanted criminal take things too hard for him to surrender himself to the bureau? Chapter 1036. Surrender. Countless question marks surfaced in Yu Guang's mind. As for Shun Yuqi and the upper echelons of the bureau, who were watching all of this from the surveillance cameras, their expressions turned odd. At this point in time, only an idiot would believe Zhou when he said that he wanted to surrender himself. If he really wanted to surrender, he should have done so long ago. Why would he wait until now? Director General, what should we do? Yu Guang whispered to Shun Yuqi through the communicator. Director General, we mustn't let Zhou Wen in. This must be a scheme of his to topple our bureau. A director immediately reminded. That's right. That Zhou Wen can't enter Sky Pass, so he wants to use such a method to sneak in. He definitely wants to kill us. We can't let him in. Director General, Zhou Wen is Wang Mingyuan's disciple. We have to be wary of him. The upper echelons of the bureau were surprisingly unanimous. They definitely couldn't let Zhou Wen in. Ordinary people might not know how terrifying Zhou Wen was, but what kind of place was the bureau? It was where the Federation's eyes and ears were. They knew Zhou Wen better than anyone else. It could be said that Zhou Wen's file was one of the highest in the Federation. It was on par with Jing Daoxian, Wang Mingyuan, and a few others. Even the Federation's senators didn't have files as confidential as Zhou Wen's. They knew very well how terrifying Zhou Wen was. The information from the investigations was shocking. Anyone who read the information would no longer treat him as a college student who had yet to graduate unless their brains were damaged. Shin Yuqi was naturally the one who knew Zhou Wen the best in the bureau, so he felt a headache coming on. Shin Yuqi naturally didn't believe a word about surrendering himself. However, would Zhou Wen leave so easily since he was already at the bureau? Let's hold him down first and find out what he's up to. Shen Yuqi ordered Yu Guang. He knew that escaping was definitely not a solution. He had to think of a way to resolve the problem. Tang Zhizhong was at a loss and didn't know what to do. Zhou Wen was actually a wanted criminal of the bureau. Furthermore, he was the kind that had a screw loose and wanted to surrender himself. Who didn't know that the bureau was unreasonable? As long as one's brain wasn't damaged, they wouldn't come here to surrender. Even if they really felt guilty and chose to commit suicide to atone for their sins, they wouldn't come here to surrender. I'm doomed. I'm doomed. I actually believed a lunatic's words. I even got someone to send me a spacesuit. Isn't this just asking for trouble? Tang Zhizhong was already a little afraid. The Bureau was already determined to breach the contract. Now, if they found an excuse to arrest him and this lunatic, he would probably lose his life, much less his money. Just as Tang Zhizhong was feeling terrified, he heard Yu Guang speak from above the city gate. Tang Zhizhong was no stranger to Yu Guang. He was one of the four censors of the Bureau. Apart from the deceased Kai Jin, he was the most senior. Furthermore, Yu Guang was the head of the General Affairs Department. All sorts of matters in the Bureau had to go through him. The spacesuit matter also needed to go through Yu Guang. However, Yu Guang was only responsible for the final decision. There were still layers of officials below him. Tang Zhizhong had no chance to personally discuss this matter with Yu Guang. He had come a few times previously, hoping to meet Yu Guang to clarify the matter regarding the spacesuit. However, Yu Guang didn't see him at all. He only got Tang Zhizhong to discuss it with the officials below. Yu Guang also had a nickname, cold-faced Hades. From this nickname, one could tell what kind of person he usually was. I'm afraid there's a misunderstanding. Our bureau has never had a warrant for you. You aren't our criminal either. Yu Guang paused for a moment before continuing. I've heard a little about you. You're a good student with excellent character and studies. You're humble and sincere, and you've contributed a lot to our federation. What do you mean by turning yourself in? Tang Zhizhong listened to Yu Guang's words and looked at his kind face. He almost thought that he had recognized the wrong person. Is this really cold-faced Hades, Yu Guang? Tang Zhizhong sized up Yu Guang again and again to confirm that he hadn't seen the wrong person. It was indeed cold-faced Hades. There's no misunderstanding. I'm guilty. I feel bad and want to surrender to atone for my crimes, Zhou said with a serious expression. See that? This fellow is just looking for trouble. He wants to enter Sky Pass and kill us. We definitely can't let him in, a director shouted in the office. Yu Guang, figure out why he's here. Shin Yuqi frowned slightly, but he didn't panic. The world's best pass wasn't for nothing. No matter how strong Zhou Wen was, it was impossible for him to forcefully barge into Sky Pass. It's over. It's over. It's not easy for cold-faced Hades to show his kindness and say something sensible. This punk actually wants to court death. Tang Zhizhong's expression was ashen. He felt that Yu Guang definitely wouldn't let him off once Zhou Wen said that. He would arrest him first before deciding whether he was guilty or not. However, to his surprise, Yu Guang's expression turned even friendlier. His smile turned even friendlier. The Bureau isn't a law enforcement agency. If you really want to surrender, you should go to the police station. However, I know your character. You're a promising youth, a future pillar of the Federation. You're not the kind of person who commits crimes. Are you in some kind of trouble? If you have any difficulties, tell our Bureau. The Bureau is a department of the Federation. We have the obligation to resolve the problems of the Federation's citizens. Tang Zhizhong was in a daze when he heard that, feeling as though he was dreaming. The Bureau isn't a law enforcement agency. It has the obligation to resolve the problems of the Federation's citizens. Is this still the Bureau I know? Is this still the cold-faced Hades I know, Yu Guang? Tang Zhizhong suddenly realized that the young man in front of him might not be a lunatic. Just as Yu Guang was trying his best to persuade him, trucks drove over from afar. It was the people from Tang Zhizhong's company who had transported the spacesuits over. The speed of the trucks was very fast. Soon, a row of trucks stopped not far from Tang Zhizhong. A middle-aged man jumped out of the car impatiently. As he ran towards Tang Zhizhong, he asked loudly, "Old Tang, what's going on? Is the Bureau willing to accept our batch of goods? After you informed them, I transported the goods as quickly as possible. How we do the handover?" "No, the Bureau didn't agree to accept our goods," Tang Zhizhong said as though. "They didn't agree to accept our goods? Then why did you get us to transport the goods over?" Many of the factory's employees got out of the cars and surrounded Tang Zhizhong. They were all counting on their salaries to support their families after this batch of goods was sold. This Mr. Zhou said that he can get the Bureau to accept our goods, Tang Zhizhong said as he pointed at Zhou, one with a complicated expression. He's from the Bureau? Everyone looked at Zhou, one in disbelief when they saw how young he was. No. He's a criminal who wants to surrender himself. As Tang Zhizhong spoke, his expression turned even odder. Chapter 1037. Surrender? Prisoner? Everyone looked at Zhou Wen and Tang Zhizhong in astonishment. "Old Tang, are you still joking at a time like this? Everyone is waiting for this money to live." The middle-aged man who came first thought that Tang Zhizhong was joking. Tang Zhizhong smiled bitterly, unsure of how to explain. At that moment, Zhou Wen said to Yu Guang, "I've indeed encountered some difficulties. Is your Bureau really willing to help me? It's our Bureau's duty to resolve the problems of the Federation citizens. Feel free to tell us what difficulties you have. As long as it's within our authority, we will definitely help you," Yu Guang said righteously, as though he was a selfless justice. "Old Tang, that person looks like Yu Guang, right? The middle-aged uncle looked at Yu Guang on the building door with some uncertainty. He recognized Yu Guang, but today he didn't dare to recognize it. It's Yu Guang. Tang Zhizhong nodded. But why would Yu Guang? The middle-aged man was skeptical, his eyes filled with puzzlement. It's probably because of him. Tang Zhizhong looked in Zhou Wen's direction and whispered to the middle-aged man, "Perhaps our space suits can really be inspected this time. I've been very interested in space suits recently. I want to buy a few space suits to study. Perhaps I can contribute to the Federation's aerospace industry. However, as you know, I'm just a poor student. I don't have much money to begin with, and I've been wanted by your bureau. I don't have the money to buy space suits." Zhou Wen said, "Director General, what should we do?" Yu Guang had no choice but to ask Shin Yuqi again when he saw Zhou Wen brazenly extorting him. Shin Yuqi looked at Tang Zhizhong and company, who were being monitored, and asked with a frown, "That should be Tang Zhizhong from Tang Aerospace, right? I remember that he has always been the spacesuit supplier for our Bureau's space project. What's going on with them?" Immediately, a director stood up and said, "Director General, it's like this. We recently changed a spacesuit supplier, so we have some contractual differences with Tang Aerospace. Tang Corporation spacesuits have always been of excellent quality. Why did they change suppliers?" Shin Yuqi asked with a frown. Everyone immediately fell silent. Shin Yuqi pointed at them with his finger, but he didn't say a word. Finally, he said into the communicator, "You know how to deal with Tang Aerospace, right?" "I understand." Yu Guang responded and hurriedly said to Zhou Wen, "It's our duty to support the research and development of young talents. There are many advanced space suits in the Bureau. If you're interested in studying them, I could give you a few. I heard that Tang Aerospace's spacesuits are the best and most advanced in the Federation. I'm rather interested in this," Zhou Wen added. "That's easy. Tang Aerospace is our Bureau's spacesuit supplier. We just ordered a batch of spacesuits. If you want them, I can sponsor you a few," Yu Guang immediately said. "Are you talking about this batch?" Zhou Wen asked as he pointed at the trucks. "Yes," Yu Guang said. "I heard that there's a problem with this batch of goods. You haven't accepted it yet. Could there really be a problem?" Zhou Wen asked in surprise. "That's just a rumor. Tang Corps spacesuits have always been of high quality. There's definitely no problem with them. We were just about to inspect them," Yu Guang said through gritted teeth. "Then hurry up and inspect them. You have to check them carefully. I don't want some inferior products," Zhou Wen said indifferently. Yu Guang had no choice but to send someone to inspect them. The entire process was surprisingly smooth. In less than 10 minutes, the inspection was completed on the spot, and the goods were accepted. Tang Zhizhong and the other employees of Tang Aerospace felt like they were dreaming. After the inspection, the Bureau didn't dare move the spacesuits in the trucks in the Sky Pass. They were afraid that Zhou Wen would take the opportunity to rush in when Sky Pass opened. "There are so many spacesuits. Are you planning on giving them to me for research? The Bureau sure is generous." Zhou Wen gave a thumbs up before saying to Tang Zhizhong, "These space suits were given to me by the Bureau. Please help me send them to this place. Is that all right?" "No, no problem." Tang Zhizhong took the note with the address written on it and hurriedly instructed the company's employees to reload the trucks and pull the spacesuits back. The bigwigs of the Bureau were depressed. That was more than 100 spacesuits. They needed to pay a huge sum of money. Although this wasn't a huge sum to the Bureau, they were still displeased that Zhou Wen had taken all of them. "Mr. Zhou, thank you. Thank you so much." Tang Zhizhong brought a few of the company's upper echelons to thank Zhou Wen. "There's no need to thank me. This was bought by the Bureau. It has nothing to do with me. Just help me send it to the place," Zhou Wen said. "Mr. Zhou, don't worry. We guarantee that it will be delivered to the place. This is my number. If there's any problem with the space suits in the future, call me at any time. Even if the company is dissolved, I'll provide you with after-sales services." Tang Zhizhong handed his number to Zhou Wen with both hands. "All right, you may leave." Zhou Wen took the note with the number written on it and put it away. He looked at Yu Guang at the city gate. He had no intention of leaving. Although spacesuits could resolve some of the problems of survival in space, they could only be used in relatively safe areas. Zhou Wen wasn't sure if he could teleport to a safe area, so he wanted more. Helping Tang Zhizhong and company was just something he had done in passing. Such a small price wasn't enough to resolve his grudge with the Bureau. Actually, I'm also very interested in the space station. I want to study it. Tang Zhizhong and company, who were leaving, trembled when they heard Zhou Wen's words. Let's go quickly and send the things safely to Mr. Zhou. Tang Zhizhong woke up the middle-aged man in a daze and urged him to drive faster. The middle-aged man started the car, but he couldn't help but glance at Zhou Wen through the rearview mirror. He said with a complicated expression, "Old Tang, that young. Mr. Zhou, who is he?" Cold-faced Hades seems to be very afraid of him. It's not just cold-faced Hades. I heard that Shinyuchi is also in Sky Pass and hasn't left, Tang Zhizhong whispered. The middle-aged man's expression turned even odder. Mr. Zhou is so young, yet he can shock the Bureau. It's truly unbelievable. Shinyuchi felt a headache coming on. Zhou was asking for an exorbitant price. Equipment like a space station required a lot of technology and materials. In this era, many technologies and materials were difficult to obtain. Building a space station could be said to be fraught with difficulties. The Bureau didn't even have many space stations, but Zhou wanted one. This was simply making things difficult for him. Suddenly, Shinyuchi seemed to think of something as his eyes lit up. He said into the communicator, "Bring Zhou in. I want to talk to him." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.